welcome to the East Central Community Meeting tonight. And please eat at least 2 drumsticks because we have enough for everyone to have too. We appreciate your coming, and we're very appreciative that the fire department is here with us. So the very first thing we'll do is turn it to them for some tips for us in terms of our neighborhood.
Fire exits right there.
Very good. Hello everybody, I'm Rokas. I'm with the fire department. We are from Station 4, that's up on 11th Avenue, so we're kind of out of district. So I'm not super familiar with you guys, but our chief just sent out like a general newsletter for some safety tips and things like that. It was based on kind of e-bikes. There has been like a new reclassification of the class 3 e-bikes, if you're familiar with that. Something that can go over 20 miles an hour, unassisted with pedals, is now classified as basically a motorcycle. Requires a helmet. I'm not on enforcement, but wearing a helmet is always a good idea, whether it's an e-bike, regular bike, always be sure to do that. You guys have lots of cross streets here, just like the avenues. Just always be mindful of people on their bikes, riding in their bike lanes. Or not in the bike lanes. You gotta watch out for them wherever they may be. They might not be exactly where you expect them to be. And that goes both ways, for when you're driving in your car or riding on your bike. Just be mindful of that. There's some tight alleyways here. We just appreciate keeping them clear, just so that we can get to our hydrants, pull our hose, utilize those alleyways as need be. We just want you guys to stay safe, just stay vigilant. Keep your heads up on driving conditions. Do we have any questions?
One firework went off last night already.
Yeah.
In the neighborhood. I'm pretty sure it's about
Yeah. That season is coming up. Just kind of something to be mindful of. Obviously, do your part to be smart. Do those at the designated times in the designated areas.
You remind us of the regulations as far as time goes and when they can do their something like that?
I believe it's 2 days before the 4th and after the 4th, and then the 24th as well.
And is it free for all 24 hours a day, or is there a time limit for that?
I don't think so. It's just during that period, there's 2 days grace period.
I thought they weren't allowed to be above 90s in years past. Keeping it.
Yeah, so I haven't seen like the newest map yet of like the restricted districts. But in the past, it will be a dry year.
At one time, you had some great signs put
Yeah.
up in those neighborhoods saying you can't be fireworks. Do you think they'll have that issue?
I'll ask my captain. Yeah, we're going to set those signs up again.
Great.
To be clear.
Are there regulations about grassland? I have a neighbor I have a good relationship with, but he doesn't mow his grass and it gets very long, and then eventually I get out and weed whack it and so on, but it is a fire risk. Are there regulations I should let him know about?
Regulation for keeping grass
Grassland.
long.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's gonna be more of a compliance
That's
issue.
civil enforcement,
Yeah.
right?
So,
If it's in the front yard or side yard, but backyard, they can do whatever they want,
Yeah. That's what
unfortunately.
But if it's dry and fire hazard, even?
You can report it to the SLC app, if
Yeah.
there violations or potential violations, and they'll determine and then they'll close it out or they'll pass it on to whoever's supposed to do it. Definitely go through the app, there's lots of options, so.
Okay, thanks.
I was gonna ask about the e-bike. It's illegal for them to ride on sidewalks,
I
right?
know in the downtown area, yeah, definitely like the class 3, like the bigger e-bikes that could go over 20 without pedal assist. That's just basically like a motorcycle. So anywhere like on a trail that a motorcycle wouldn't be allowed, that's the new
But what about neighborhood
regulation over
neighbors?
here. In the neighborhood over here, like as far as, I know in the downtown area, they're completely restricted on sidewalks. I believe here, if there's a bike path, they should be on the bike path. They shouldn't be on the sidewalk.
So will e-bikes be considered motorized vehicles in City Creek? City Creek's open for.
So a type 3, yeah, like a powered, unpedal assisted, over 20 miles an hour is kind of classified as motorcycles.
So there's a helmet law for them?
Yeah, so it's basically like a motorcycle, like Department of Transportation. You have to wear a helmet or else you can get a ticket. You gotta be 16 and have a motorcycle endorsement for the Type 3 e-bikes. Everything else is not, like if it goes up to 20 miles an hour, pedal assisted, and that's not legally required, but safety concerns, I say wear helmets, whether it's an e-bike or not, always.
There's a motorcycle safe helmet law here.
So that's just something that's passed May 6th.
There is a law for motorcycle helmets too.
Already.
Fire department does not enforce that.
No, we are not enforcement. We want you guys to be safe, wear your helmets. We'll help out if the bad thing happens, but we want you guys to do everything you can do to be safe.
I want to just let this nice team stand up and just, we want to thank them for all the things they do for us. Last question.
Yeah, so what about like the scooters, the electric scooters that go flying up the sidewalks going 20 miles an hour? Or the skateboards, it's like.
Yeah, so the classifications that I've seen is just like anything that goes over 20 unassisted by that, as long as they're like under 20, I don't believe they're classified as motorcycles.
So they can be on sidewalks.
I don't think the new law addresses like scooters, skateboards, motorized skateboards, one wheels, anything like that. Like everything that we've seen so far has been very specific to just bicycles.
You can find more on the Utah State website, it's a statewide law, that will give you all the specific guidelines.
Cause yeah, I mean, it's an interesting world walking on the sidewalk.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Alright, I talked to Esther, we're gonna scoot out just because we're pretty far out of our district, so we wanna make sure we get back and go to the north side of town as well, so.
Thank you for coming. I do want to just answer your question about scooters. There's a new person who works for transportation in Salt Lake City. We've been talking to him about scooters, and we're probably going to bring him to our next meeting to talk a little bit about some of the improvements they're trying to make in our neighborhood. So, because we not only have the issue of where they're driving, but where they're leaving them.
Yeah.
So
like in the middle of the
we're going to
sidewalk.
work on that next. I want to give you just a couple of quick minor updates. So I think we've talked about the 12 East Islands right now are being designed by engineering to be fixed. They will be planting next spring. We're very excited and thankful for that funding. The 10th East Senior Center, the whole area for that park is being rezoned for a public park, that whole area. And also it just went through a historic process through the city for a national registration designation for the building. So that goes next to the state, and then it'll go federally for them to make the final decision. We, of course, have all been dealing with District 4 representation in the last little while. And I did want to just give you a quick update on the timeline of how this will be working. The City Council will need to appoint someone new by the 11th of next month, 11th of June. The process is that an application will go out the 1st of next week. They're hoping for Monday, but they're not sure they'll be ready with the full packet by Monday, so it'll be the first part of the week. People will have about 2 weeks or so to actually fill out an application if they're interested in being our representative. Once those are all sent in, it goes through a process with the city recorder to look at qualification to make sure that everybody who actually applies is qualified. And then a public hearing will be scheduled for interviews with those folks. They have to give us 14 days notice for the actual public hearing. It is an open meeting for us to actually go to and actually listen to the candidates as they respond. Usually it's been about 5 minutes that they each have an opportunity to present something they'd like to speak to, and then they're asked questions. That night, the City Council will vote if possible. The candidate needs at least 4 votes of the 6 sitting council members. If there are ties or that doesn't work, they do re-votes, and they try to actually do it that night. If in fact when they select the person, they pretty well swear him in immediately. So we will have representation again. Tim's going to give us some steps because we're at a very critical time right now in the middle of the city budget for the new year. And we, in order for us to actually have representation, the city council as a whole and the city council staff is very concerned about making sure that we have representation during this time. They're all really looking forward to our comments and feedback on anything they're reviewing, and Tim will tell us a little more about all of that when it's his turn. We have a big agenda tonight, and I'm very excited. I've been wanting our next guest to come talk to us for a while. Turner Bitten is the executive director, and you've changed your name. Used to be Neighbors for More Neighbors, and now it's Wasatch Advocates for Livable Communities, and I'd love to invite him up to talk to us about housing and housing policies. Thank you.
I'm pretty loud, so I don't know if I need this, but my name is Turner Bitten, so I'm the Executive Director of Wasatch Advocates for Livable Communities. This is a project of mine that originally started as an all-volunteer group right here in Salt Lake City called Salt Lake City Neighbors for More Neighbors. And if you're familiar with the NIMBY or YIMBY terminology, yes in my backyard, no in my backyard, we are a yes in my backyard group. So we work at the state and local level to reform zoning to make it easier to build all kinds of different housing. And we're working, like I said, at the state level with state elected officials on statewide policy that would impact our community, and then also at the local level. So this was a project that came out of my time serving as the Glendale Neighborhood Council Chair. So I served for 6 years in that capacity until just this most recent January, and then I rotated out and was termed out. So I'm out of free job jail. I have a lot more free time, but I started this organization as just a volunteer project. I never imagined it would be my full-time job, let alone that we would expand beyond just focusing on Salt Lake City. But we had an opportunity at the end of last year. We had our largest funder, which is Arnold Ventures. They're a national group that's working to solve the housing crisis, among some other issues. They approached us and said, if we were to become a regional organization, would we work on statewide policy, and who would potentially help other cities like Salt Lake City reform their zoning codes? And so we said yes. They funded us, and I was able to hire a policy manager and a communications person. And so we felt that Salt Lake City Neighbors for More Neighbors didn't really work if we were working in Park City, in Heber City, and Ogden, and throughout the Wasatch front and back. So decided to change our name. So we have right now one of the campaigns that we're most excited about in Salt Lake City. It's called Expanding Housing Options. So this is a proposal in the city that would do two things. First, it would be a residential infill program. So basically what it would do is shrink what could be the minimum lot size in what you see around us, the traditionally single family or single building parcels in the city. So it would allow, like particularly on the west side where we have larger lots, that you could actually split your lot and build small homes back behind an existing home to the side of a home. And so that's the first thing that it would do. There's a number of things that it would do to accomplish that. I would encourage you to visit Expanding Housing Options on Salt Lake City's website because it does a good job of laying it out. But that's the first piece. And then the second piece is it would legalize up to fourplexes in those same areas. And so that would accomplish the goal of increasing density in a very gentle way, ways that are very familiar in this neighborhood. If you drive around, there's duplexes and triplexes and quadplexes everywhere that were built before our modern zoning code was implemented. And then there was a citywide down zone in the 1990s that further reduced what was possible to build in these single structure neighborhoods. And so undoing that, kind of going back to the future, re-legalizing a form of housing that has existed historically but that hasn't practically been able to be built in these neighborhoods in years, is a way of tackling the housing affordability crisis. And so it's something that we're very excited about. Additional things that we have worked on: accessory dwelling units, detached and attached. Those are the small mother-in-law apartments, if you're not familiar with them, that you can build above a garage or in the backyard of an existing home. We've worked on the townhome zoning, RMF 30, RMF 35, and 45. All of those are initiatives that we've supported here in our city. Beyond that, as we kind of look to the future of the city, looking at things like additional affordable housing incentives for creating truly affordable housing that's deed restricted, not what you put on a billboard if you're trying to sell housing, but actually affordable housing that's legally protected and has long-term affordability benefits for the neighborhood through deed restriction. Let's see. I'll kind of leave it there. I know that there will be questions about the work that we're doing, and I would like to get to those. Yeah.
How do the setbacks, how are they affected that are in the current zoning versus when you add a tiny home in your backyard?
Yeah, so we're hoping that they'll be reduced significantly. So what we're pushing for is for 4 feet on either side of the structure and then 5 feet front and back. So it would reduce the size of the lot, it would reduce the size of the yard, and then you would be able to build a single family home pretty easily on even a 1,400 square foot lot.
So you're trying to allow subdivision versus keeping the lot as is and just adding, so it's actually
Subdividing.
sale, like a full subdivision.
Yes, and the benefit of this is that it would unlock for sale housing. So one of the issues with accessory dwelling units is they're attached to that primary dwelling. So if you sell it and you move out, you generally have to evict people if you're not living there on the property. By being able to split it, these would be independent homes that would be sold separately. And then the city has included a policy called owner occupancy. So if you owned it, you would have to live in it. So you couldn't build it and rent it out.
I think that's stick on.
Yeah, yeah. You would have to live in it. Yeah.
Are you allowed to build tiny homes of the kind that are mobile in your backyard?
You could, but generally you're gonna run into zoning issues there. So any kind of non-permanent structure, if it's on wheels, is governed in a slightly different way than if you were to build like a mother-in-law cottage behind your home. Modular is a little different, so if it's like built off-site and then plopped in place, but it's not on wheels, those are easier to build. Yeah.
Do you work with those people subdividing and building new? With the design, implementation, working with historical aspects and how to fit that in and not have them, so they have some guideline or issues so they don't build the cheapest thing possible?
Yes and no. So I have to kind of split it into 2 different questions. So the historical preservation piece, the expanding housing options will not impact historic districts. So those subdivisions are generally not even allowed in historic districts. They could be like on the periphery of one, so it might seem like it's in there, but they actually can't be in the heart of those historic districts. So that's one piece of it. The second piece of it is that the state preempts cities from regulating design standards on single family homes. So if you build like 6 townhomes that are all attached, the city can do design review on that. If it's a standalone single family home, they're not allowed to do design review on those, which would be the design, the colors, the windows, all those kinds of things.
That's too bad. Bad design is bad design.
But bad design is subjective.
No, bad design is bad design. But anyway, that's.
What do you say? Agree to disagree. That's how we get out of it. Otherwise, we'll be going at it all night.
I think the intent here is to kind of make it more affordable. We're doing a tiny home in back of one of our properties, and yet the city charges full impact fees for sewer and water, even though we're using the same water line and the same sewer line. So that put like $10,000 more on the cost of putting this home in. If we're really trying to do affordable housing, I think there should be some sort of a modification. If you're using your existing sewer and your existing water, that they either waive that or reduce it quite a bit. I was shocked when I got the bill for that. I thought, what? This is not gonna make it affordable at all. So if you can give some feedback to the Salt Lake City, that'd be awesome. Because I'll tell you right now, it's not gonna help for affordability if you're gonna be putting that kind of price on top of it.
You're right on. And so take what I've said about expanding housing options, because the next thing that we're recommending is something my organization is pushing for that is not in the city's proposal. But we want the city to do a top to bottom review of their development processes, because you're exactly right. One of the biggest issues in our market is that only the big developers can really play in our market. You as an individual homeowner, or let's say you own 4 or 5 properties, the cost of putting in an ADU is between $200,000 and $300,000 right now. And that's before you get to the $30,000 the city will charge you for sewer hookup, in a variety of different things. And so we're asking the city to do a top to bottom review of their entire plan development process, their entire zoning change process, to really look at how do we get more small scale developers or builders into the market and get the big ones, not get the big ones out of it, but increase competition.
One other point on that, we're putting 2 lots behind one of our big lots up here by the cemetery. And they have hit us with every single study you would ever imagine. The last one they just hit us with this last week is they want us to do a seismic review. I mean, we're having to put in a street light, we're having to extend a water line that's going nowhere, 60 feet. We're having to put in a new fire hydrant. They're hitting us with every stinking thing you can imagine, and again, it doesn't help with affordability at all. Our cost of putting that in is about $100 grand since we started the process.
Well, and we use the case of Raleigh, North Carolina as an example. So expanding housing options, what Salt Lake City's trying to do, has been done in Seattle, Portland, North Carolina, or Raleigh, North Carolina, Durham, North Carolina, Houston, Texas. And Raleigh, North Carolina basically passed a policy that would have legalized all of these types of houses, but they didn't fix their underlying application processes, and so they actually saw like only 10% of what Durham saw, and they're a couple of hours away from one another. And so that's one of our asks of the city, is really to look at those development processes, especially on things like public utilities. Because let's say you build your ADU behind your existing home, one of our long-term priorities at the state level is to allow and create a consistent framework for allowing them to be sold separately. But you couldn't, if you were sharing the line, you would have to have 2 separate lines if that change were made in the future. And so we want to get to a situation where public utilities is not blocking or adding additional expense to what would be more affordable housing. Yeah?
You had mentioned that in an historic district that Dwarf's proposals would not apply. Is that correct?
Yes.
So like in the University Historic District? Okay.
Yeah, or the Yellcrest, any of those that are locally designated historic districts, the subdivision process doesn't apply because they're treated separately.
Is that also true with regards to the number of occupants?
That I don't know the answer to. I would have to look into that. But I would guess that they're separate. Yeah.
So I think one of the areas that we're interested in, those of us who live in proximity to the university, is this business about the number of unrelated renters in each rental unit and redefining of family. Is that something in your purview, or is this a separate purview? I mean, it's listed here with your name beside it, but I don't know if that's something you're going to be able to address.
So we support it in concept, but it all comes down to enforcement. And really, does the city have the resources to enforce the policies they're putting in place? I think largely what you're seeing through the change of definition of family is an acknowledgement that the policy that we have is essentially unenforceable and isn't practical in 2026. Yeah.
It's only because they won't enforce it. This is enforced in communities all over the country.
Well, but what would the enforcement look like?
The enforcement would be to give people notice that, first of all, the taxes that they would owe on those rentals that they're probably not paying. And secondly, that you're in violation of the law and it will be enforced against you. I had an ownership interest in a place up in Park City years ago, many years ago, 20 years ago. They knew how to enforce in a heartbeat. As soon as you advertised, they were on top of you, you got a letter, and you either stopped or you knew that you had to rent for at least 3 months or longer. And the whole rationale for this, I know it sounds really cool, that you're getting more people, more affordable housing. What it is a boondoggle for absentee landlords that do not take care of their properties. Their tenants don't take care of their properties. And I'd love to walk you around about a 4-block area, 2 blocks from here, and you can see how absolutely run down it is, how we used to have all these family homes, a lot of children. Now we've lost, what, 2 or 3 elementary schools in the last 3 years because nobody can live here in Salt Lake City. with their children. Nobody would live in our neighborhood with children.
I-
Let me
I-
tell you, with all the drunken parties.
I wanna move on to other people, too. I hear you, I think we're at a fundamental disagreement on this. So when I ask what enforcement would look like, the practical impacts of that is that people who are struggling to find a place in our city and what you're talking about is naturally occurring affordable housing, which I believe is a myth. It only exists because property loses desirability over time and because we're adding additional properties. But in my mind, what would the end result of an additional enforcement would be is you're gonna have people who are trying to find a place in our city getting kicked out of housing that they can't afford. And they're part of our workforce, they're going to our schools,
Well, if they moved in that property, it would have been illegal. So what is the problem with having people leave if they're there illegally?
What if the law is unjust?
And, pardon me?
The law is unjust, because it's only gonna be enforced in neighborhoods with the resources to monitor and report properties. And it's going to be against disproportionately lower income people. So I think this is the fundamental disagreement that we have, is that you're going to end up in a situation where enforcement happens on the very people who we are trying to solve the housing affordability crisis for. And there are not enough affordable units in our
So
city.
you're trying to solve the affordability crisis for university students who want to rent a place so they can have their frat parties?
I don't think any university student rents a place specifically for frat parties.
I think
Yes,
they
they
do.
do.
They
Oh,
absolutely
You
do.
have no idea.
Folks, let's, please be civil.
Yeah, we should do this offline as opposed to in this one.
But that's a completely separate issue from what we're talking about. Right?
We
Like
can
that's,
bring it up and work, I don't know who wrote the minutes, but.
I'll be talking about it some, so just hold your horses.
It sounds to me like this is a comprehensive proposal. Is it in writing anywhere?
yes. So look up expanding housing options on Salt Lake City's website. And they've got the draft of the law and they've got an explainer.
So, you said you're focusing on infill. You also say you're engaging with the legislature. When you engage with the legislature, do you advocate for increased support? There are so many large apartment complexes going on. Those are enormous expenses. And here's my experience, having served on the governor's housing affordability. The big developers come in and go, we're building affordable housing, and we're making sure that we can help people make 60 or 70% of the area median income. 3 to 4 years ago, the area median income was over $100,000 a year. So they're saying affordable housing is people are making $70,000 a year. And what Wayne Niederhauser and I would say in those meetings is, let's have housing that's available for a family that makes $35,000 a year. The only way that's going to occur in these large apartment complexes is if there's more support. To do that, it takes longer for a developer to build that. You want to build housing that people will pay market rate for? You want to build housing for affordable housing, you've got to get more tax credits. And our state does not put a lot of money into this compared to other states that really want affordable housing. I'm not necessarily opposed to discussion about infill. This issue is so big, there's so many units, but to just work on infill and not work on a state supporting more affordable housing. Do you talk about that out there?
Yes, we do. So the state has banned inclusionary zoning, so a city cannot tell a developer that they have to include a certain percentage as affordable. And there's mixed reviews of whether that works or it doesn't work. If it's unfunded, it doesn't work, and developers pull out of the market and they don't build anything, which is what San Francisco did. Other cities, like Portland, fully fund their inclusionary zoning, so they require developers to include some affordable units, but then they use housing trust funds and a variety of different funds to pay to offset the cost of that. And the reason that I think this is important for folks to understand is, say you're building 100 apartments, or you're building 10 apartments, you're going to pay the same amount to build that, depending on how tall it is, as regardless of the number of units. You're going to pay.
You're talking about the same amount per unit?
Pretty much. So $350 per square foot, regardless of what you're building. Obviously, if you're building something with brick, you're building something with steel, a giant high-rise downtown, gonna look different, but that's not most of what we're building here. Most of what we're building is timber framed, smaller scale, outside of downtown. Regardless of what you spend to build that, or regardless of how many units you are building, you're going to spend approximately the same amount to build that unit. So it could be, just for argument's sake, let's say you're building 10 units at $250,000. If we tell you that 2 of those units have to be rented at 30% AMI, it means that the rent that you can charge is 1/3 of the area median income, 30% of someone's income at that point. So there's a gap immediately created for the builder between what they're going to pay to build the project and what they're going to be able to charge in rent for that project. So we have to take that into account when we're thinking about things like parking, when we're thinking about all these different other mandates that we put on top of builders when they're trying to build affordable. My personal opinion, this is not my organization's opinion, my personal opinion is we need a fully funded inclusionary zoning law in the state of Utah. That's how we're going to get there. I cannot wave any magic wand that will make that happen at any point in my lifetime. So what we work on, and we started this in Salt Lake City, working with the city, is like affordable housing incentives. So if you are going to, say you are eligible to build 10 units under the existing zoning, but you make the agreement to do 2 or 1 at 30% AMI in your project, then you could potentially build an additional 2 units. You get a density bonus for the inclusion of affordable units. And this is working in Salt Lake City, but it's hard to scale an incentive-based model. A much easier model is a fully funded model like what the state of Oregon and the city of Portland have done. But so to answer your question, deeply affordable housing, absolutely, we talk about that constantly. We talk about 60%, 80% AMI, and when we say affordable, we mean deed restricted, permanently affordable homes. We don't mean this is affordable based on some sloganeering. We mean there's a legal restriction on that affordability to protect people. Yeah?
Does your organization advocate for non-market social housing?
No, because it's more expensive and results in fewer units. We looked at Salt Lake City, and we compared them to Toronto, to Seattle, which has gotten a lot of fanfare, to Vienna, and there's another city that I'm forgetting that was in Italy. All of whom had social housing programs. The only one that works and creates more affordable units than Salt Lake City has is Vienna, and that's because they have a constitutional right to housing, and you cannot be evicted in the country of Austria. And so if you, regardless of your health conditions, regardless of how you treat your last apartment, you have a guaranteed right to housing, and they're able to cycle people through that. And when you look at a lot of European countries, the reason that they've been able to make social housing work is because they had millions of people die in World War II. And so they had vast amounts of private property that were able to be accumulated by the government at a much discounted price because it was largely under rubble. And then they were able to develop really robust housing programs using literally the ashes of World War II because they had land that wasn't worth anything and they were able to strategically build social housing programs. When we compared ourselves to Seattle, for example, we found that they were spending almost 3 to 1 what Salt Lake City is doing through its redevelopment agency, the housing authority, and its different vehicles for investing in public housing. So
that was city effort.
Yes.
Not state effort.
No, not state effort. Now, if you had a state that committed to social housing, I think you could make it work, but I don't believe Salt Lake City has the tax base or the ability to do that. And I think the way that we have invested by investing in specific projects through public-private partnerships, like leaps and bounds, dollar for dollar, we outcompete Seattle dramatically. And they've had to go back twice now for additional taxes to pay for their social housing developer, which has built fewer units than their redevelopment agency did before they did away with them.
Okay. I disagree with what you said, but I'm not going to debate you here. But if anybody wants to know about social housing, I would love to have that conversation. Voters in Seattle felt so strongly about it. They had a voters referendum that passed overwhelmingly. And Vancouver's social housing program has been enormously successful. And you take housing out of the market and provide far more housing security for those tenants.
Yeah, I think the problem with comparing to Vancouver or Toronto is that constitutional right to housing. That does not exist in the United States.
That's not how it works.
Well, but the government has, if they are building social housing, the government has an obligation to keep people in that housing. And so it creates a different incentive than we have here, where agencies point to different other agencies and say, it's your job, it's our job, it's their job. Like, we have a very fragmented housing system, whereas Canada, from the federal government down, has a very centralized housing system that easily plugs people back into social housing and other different types of housing. And they have a market, but it's a different housing market. I would love to keep talking.
Yeah, I would too. I think there ought to be a really good public discussion about social housing, because we're missing that entirely, like pouring more and more money into private developers' pockets instead of building non-market social housing.
You have a question?
Yeah, it seems like the focus has been number of apartments in Salt Lake rather than size of apartments. And I'm wondering if that's being addressed a little more now
Yes.
as
Sorry,
far
can you
as
repeat the question?
families, getting families back.
Yeah, so the question was, that there's been an emphasis on the number of apartments and not necessarily on the size of apartments. And the same problem that was true when I mentioned requiring affordability is true of building larger units. So generally it's expensive to build 2 or 3 bedroom apartments, especially in an apartment complex. One of the things that we're working on at the state level would be this is a back to the future kind of policy too, but it's called single stair reform. So most large apartment complexes that you see being built, they follow a very specific design, right? They're big blocks, and they've got 2 big cement tubes of, in parking on the back generally, but 2 big cement tubes of elevators and stairs, and that's required under the fire code in some regard. And so what we're looking at doing is making a change to those building standards so you could build like the old brownstones that you see downtown. There's usually 6 apartments in them and 1 large staircase in the middle. So that would be an additional option, something that Seattle's done. Portland is in the process of doing it. Connecticut did it and then now has undone it, which is interesting. But legalizing that type of housing is one of the ways that we can get to those 2 and 3 bedrooms and to condos that are owner occupied as opposed to for rent. But usually those big apartment complexes are built the way that they are to meet building codes and fire codes.
Stay for 1 second, hold your question just 1 second. I want to hop back to some of the things that we're concerned about, right? So first of all, we know that our neighborhood has got all kinds of things coming in our direction, between student housing that's invading to the amount of units that were actually legalized. We've actually had more than 3 unrelated living in many, many of our homes for a long time, because what used to be a legalization process that used to be dealt with a board of adjustment that would approve them. People, if they went back a certain amount of years, they could prove that it had been a duplex to many people for a long time, et cetera, et cetera. So we have that coming at us. We have the housing. We have developers who are not going inside zoning, and they're rather coming into the housing area that we have, buying it up, wanting to tear it down so that they can build big, which is, the other night we were at the city council until 1 o'clock in the morning, actually dealing with a project on 8th East that's trying to take down 3 houses and rezone to a different project. And I wanted to talk about that whole aspect a little bit. In the experience I've had, civil enforcement really truly cannot go in and do much with the regulation. They knock on the door, people come to the door, or they don't. And then how do they prove whether people are blood related, not related? You then go into whether or not the people are on the title. If they're actually on the title, and if the parent buys for a student, the student is on the title, they have the right to have as many people in the house regardless of what the code says right now. There's so many variations right now that isn't exactly working. I believe all of the housing work they've done, I so appreciate Turner coming here, because I knew this would be a hot button, ready to talk about this. And in my mind, this is the beginning of a discussion we need to be having for our neighborhood, with Turner, with his organization, with the city, to actually look at how to find something that works for our area so that we're not impacted the way we are. We've taken on parties. We're dealing with the police department on that as well. There are problems there. We're working on trying to figure some of those things out, adjust the ordinance, etc. All of it is gonna take a little time, and it needs more resource. We would love more people involved in actually helping our board, helping our team work on some of these topics. What I find is often people come when it's a project right next to them, they get involved and they disappear. But actually staying to help set some policy of help in these negotiations, talking with Turner, I will talk about our area for a second. We have, along with the west side, we have the second largest amount of naturally occurring affordable housing. The benefit of that type of housing for families and such is you already have a house. Yes, they're older. Yes, there are things that sometimes need to be fixed up. You have a yard, and it does not cost the city or the state more money because there aren't any restrictions or extra things that need to be built. We need to be able to protect those homes, and we are not right now seen as one of those economic drivers for the city, but we are. Central City has some of them. We have some of them. And a lot of the other areas have worked in a way where that's not really, it's not workable. Sugar House, Yale Press, you know, the avenues. It's in our heart, and we have the transit. And so right now, we're losing all of that to just city housing as the youth's trying to come up with all the housing they're trying to build. And we're losing it. I mean, 690 people on the Office Max site, etc. We need to try and tell our story about the economics of naturally occurring housing that's important, that needs to be safeguarded, and that's from an economic standpoint. Just not from, we won't want to lose the character. It's about, we are also an economic driver for the city with what we have. And right now they do not value that. So I'm looking for people to come help us with this whole housing discussion. This is the first of it, right? And I brought Turner knowing that this was going to be a hot topic. Now, in terms of the family definition, we obviously have concern about parking. We have concern about how this is actually going to play out because we've lived it. We've experienced this. We have many, we are 73% rental. The city is an average is 53%. So we've got 20% more rental in our area already.
East Central Community Council 73.
Specifically from 9th to South Temple, 14th East to 7th East. We're at 73%. So we have the home ownership is really declining. And then we're dealing with landlords who aren't all like some of the ones who are very careful and take care of things. We are dealing with many landlords who are coming in just to make the max profit they can, mattresses all over everywhere, and renting to as many. So we've experienced this, and we need to be part of that conversation so that we can help the city understand. I believe that part of what we need to do is focus on enough funding that there's actually inspections, real inspections taking place for quality housing to begin with, so it isn't people living in really bad situations. When I inherited my mother's house across the street, there was a home on Little Morris Place. There were 20 Chinese students living in the basement, half-shelf basement. They were sleeping on the half shelves and in the dirt. You know, we don't want that kind of housing. We want quality housing for people. So tomorrow is actually the last day for feedback on the open house right now for the city in terms of this family definition. So I would encourage that you know, because we've got to find the middle road. If it were quality housing, if my belief, the answer is management and enforcement, like Rocky was saying, but enforcement in a way that they can actually do it with where they're doing building inspections, not just, I don't know. There are other solutions too. We've got to do some things because I believe this is going to pass. So it's important that we actually work on this regulation stuff. So I look forward to people coming forward and saying, yes, we'll participate. I'm sorry for taking a little of your time.
You're fine.
And I want us to work together and figure out some things to actually tell the story of our naturally occurring housing, because I don't believe that story has been well told. And I think it's up to us to do that, yeah.
I think that what was most distressing about the abandoning the unrelated renters guideline was that it wasn't replaced by anything. It was just, well, it's too hard to do, so we're not going to do anything. And it seems like if you're going to just remove all semblance of guidelines, that you have to replace it with something to protect the neighborhood and to protect the renters from avaricious landlords,
So for instance,
etc. And unsafe conditions. You can't say that it's safe to have 20 students sleeping on the floor in a basement.
so for instance, one idea with the feedback is we have, if you feel that we've been well represented on this topic, then great. But if you feel like we have not been well represented on this topic, one of the things we can ask for the city in our comments by tomorrow is that this decision be pended a bit and allow some conversation to take place with a neighborhood that's actually knows what we're talking about because we have it in our neighborhood in spades. And so we can ask in our feedback, not just opposition when we send in our letters, but a request for a hold on that final decision or moving it on and giving some time for some of us to actually work with the city on some ideas of how to make this work. Safe housing, clean housing, well put together, well managed, etc. Now I'm gonna-
We're worried about
Very,
bait and
very quickly,
switch.
Esther, where do we
Is
make
what
that comment?
is what has happened too many times, right? Developers say they will do something, they use the term affordable housing when you know it really isn't. And so do they, but they have it in there for sure, and they sell it on a zoning level, and then the design review thing that you said is not available, it goes away. Once the zone gets changed, then those gentlemen or individuals maximize the square footage, which is what you were talking about, to maximize their dollars. And it impacts our neighborhood negatively. Not always, right? But that we're worried about the bait and switch, right?
Where can you make those comments at? Where can you make?
I've heard about computer programs, AI, whatever, that landlords that own big complexes figure out how they can have certain numbers of empty units, but still optimize their profit from the whatever the big construction is. How big a problem is that? Would there be any way to check it? Because I can totally see people would be doing that, charging as much as possible, but having empty ones.
This is not something that I'm at all familiar with, so I would have to do some homework and then be able to answer that.
Yes, okay.
There was a question of where to give feedback for the city tomorrow. It's the same. But is it? Let me think. It's at the planning department right
It's
now.
Madison-
So planning
Madison-
house, open house.
Madison
If you look up Salt Lake City Planning Open House, it's one of the projects listed. There's a whole series of projects listed and it will give the feedback location. I can also send it out via email, the address for you all to get with the planner who's actually taking the feedback right now. It's
So
still
are
in,
you in
it's still in
support
planning.
of changing the, 3 unrelated rule? You're in support of allowing more?
Yeah, and for me, it comes down to that enforcement question. One, it's not currently being enforced.
It's not. I don't know how, landlords regularly just say, just tell me that that's your cousin. And then they write it in the lease and it's the tenants, right? And the landlord gets away with it, and so there's ways around it.
Yeah.
Regardless.
I think the fundamental problem you have is that if you're going to enforce on a policy like that, it's going to be horrendously unpopular. It'll be popular for the folks that want it enforced, and horrendously unpopular for anyone who it is enforced on. And so all it will take is a phone call to the city. When you are evicting 5 people from their home, it's gonna turn into a thing. And that, I think, is the fundamental problem. When we talk about enforcement, what does enforcement mean?
Right.
And that's what my question was, is not, should it be enforced? It absolutely should, otherwise why is it on books? The question is, what does that enforcement look like? And if the enforcement is, I don't know what this is, pretend that's a house. There's 6 kids living in there, city law says 4 can live there, what kids get voted out? That's the enforcement mechanism.
What do you mean by kids?
Well, say there's 6 students from the University of Utah living in this house right here. and the law says 4 can live there. You said the city down here, how do you determine which to leave? Who, like, practically,
Who has the right?
who has the right to live in our city and who doesn't?
That's a solvable, that's a solvable problem.
Sure.
That's not a Gordian knot.
Sure, but I'm telling you, it's the fundamental issue with the policy that you're talking about. Is what, yeah.
I mean, wouldn't the solution to that just be like all the tenants?
Say,
Well, sure, but is that the kind
Yeah,
of
I mean, that's
solution you want?
totally legitimate. I mean, that puts an impetus on the landlord, because the landlord doesn't wanna lose his tenants. Puts an impetus on the students, because they don't wanna lose their housing. It's on them. Two people out of the house, like, what, how is that a city issue?
I mean, because you're dealing with real people. Like, it's not a sticky issue if you're not on the other side of it.
I mean, it's the
But
same
it's a
thing
sticky
with,
issue if you're on the receiving end of it.
I mean, to me, it sounds like semantics, you don't care what, when you,
Is
like,
based
force
on
people to
it
homeless
being
people on the
safe,
streets, like.
then it should be 4 people and not 6 people.
Right.
If it's based on safety, number of bathrooms, number of square feet, whatever, then that's the way it should be.
Not on the family.
Not on the
just what you
family.
said.
Yeah.
Not on the family.
Yeah, I'm not debating any of that.
Oh, okay.
I'm just, the definition of family, if you're going purely on that and not on the behavior of the people living there, you're gonna end up in a situation where you have 6 college students who are renting a house because they can afford it there. They're not having parties and things like that, but the law will still be enforced in the same way. And that's the problem with the family definition.
The problem with all this thing is that's how they're making housing affordable. Otherwise, it wouldn't be affordable. So they'll pile in so they can afford it. I mean, it's just a problem of how people make housing affordable when it isn't affordable.
Well, this is, in my mind, is one of the selling points of the work that we do. If there are more options and we're continuously adding housing, and it can be of all scales, right? We need the large apartment complexes, but I don't think anybody in this room wants to live in a city where that's the only housing option. And we also can't have a city where the only option is a single family home, because that will cut 85% of our population out of being able to live in a home in our city. And so there's a whole range of options in between the biggest option and the smallest option that get us to a point where housing is more affordable in our cities. And if we agreed on nothing else tonight, agreeing on the fact that housing is one of the most central issues facing our city is what I hope the takeaway can be. Yeah.
I bought a property, it had 5 guys in it, it was only 2 bedroom, 1 bath. And I said, guys, I can't renew your lease, it's against the city ordinance, you can only have 3 non-related. So we're all brothers in the same church. I said, well, that doesn't work this way. So if you can go down and talk to the city and they're letting you do it, go for it. Otherwise, I'm gonna not be able to renew your lease, you can only have 3. That's it. Well, they went out, they went down to the city and spent a whole day trying to figure out how to keep there and how to keep it doing. And they went to department, said they couldn't do it. So what did? They found a landlord that didn't care about the law, and they found one that they could move into that was the same situation, 2 bedrooms, 1 bath. So I agree that they're trying to meet affordability. They really are. And they were good kids, they're really good people. So I think you gotta be careful and balance it all out, because we were all poor students once, and if they're really good tenants and they're not causing a problem, they're not causing a parking problem, they're not causing a noise problem, then I can see why there is some wisdom in having some flexibility. But you know, the landlords that try to obey the law, we try to obey the law, but it makes it kind of tough. And I'll tell you right now, it's not an affordable place for people to live right now. And that's why they don't have kids. It's not so much that there's a lot of housing that can have kids, they just can't afford it. When the houses are going for $1 million a piece in our neighborhood right now, what family of kids can afford it? And if we can't make more affordable housing that can work with families, we're never gonna see families come back.
Well, and on yours.
Just, do you know when the meeting is gonna be, Esther?
For, oh, sorry.
For the family, no, tomorrow's just the end date for the public open house. And we can keep giving feedback, but for it to be included in their packets and such, it's tomorrow.
I want to end on one parting note of an idea that we've had. The main issue with this idea is funding. To be completely honest, the city does not have a lot of discretionary funding that it can throw around in any new programs. That's why we're facing a 12.5% property tax increase this year. Those budgets are getting stretched and stretched and stretched. And then you have declining federal investment and in some cases declining state investment in cities as well. So that's why it sometimes can feel like city services are retreating because they don't have the resources that they need, and we can only tax so much at a local level sustainably. One of the ideas that we have is to keep and preserve naturally occurring affordable housing by taking a carrot as opposed to a stick approach. So if you've got a problematic property that in the past maybe could have been grandfathered in under there was a mechanism for doing this in the past that no longer exists. But if you say you had a problem property that was identified as a problem property, but it was affordable by nature, if the landlord or the person who owned the property agreed to keep that affordable but bring it up to code and make investments in the property, there would be grant funding or something like that to be able to support those landlords to bring things up to code, to add a new bathroom, to formalize a bathroom, to formalize or legalize an existing ADU that already exists, but maybe isn't up to code. But again, the funding is a problem there, and then the enforcement is the problem. It's how do you go around and knock on doors and like inspect houses? If the answer is yes, that's perfectly reasonable, but realize that there will be unintended consequences there. And folks living in naturally occurring affordable housing, if someone knocks on their door and says, you have to bring this building up to code, where do they go? You may be punishing the landlord, but at the end of the day, it's real people who are struggling to make ends meet, and doing so in affordable housing that'll pay the price. And so as we make these policies, we have to be very cognizant of those trade-offs. And I think anything that is rooted in humanity, someone brought up kicking homeless people out of parks, and for the record, I don't support any criminalization of homelessness. I think it's the wrong approach, it goes the wrong direction. Just want to nip that in the bud. We would never support anything like that, which is why I also have a fundamental problem with kicking people out of their housing easily and whimsically. It just is, with how bad the housing market is for people who are struggling to make ends meet, you're putting people in our parks if you do that. Yeah. Not every situation. But,
I think if you deal with it on a case.
I've got to go. I'm getting the big hook's going to get me. I left my cards on the table outside, and I left a list of our priorities. Obviously, we can't talk about everything tonight, but I would love to continue talking until I'm blue in the face.
And we thank you so much for coming. One of the things that I also would like to say is when I was growing up, one of my cousins owned a house, a big house up on First South and between 12th and 13th East. And it was run as a boarding house. She ran 3 meals a day. She had over 26 renters in her house. They were on army cots. But it was management. It was how it was actually enforced, how it was done, and it was managed well. So we get back to, some of the things that we need. We need like that building code. If you're first approved for this extra situation, there needs to be a real inspection to bring it up to housing standards, and that alone will help take care of things some. And then there needs to be an ongoing situation, I believe. So I don't know if that's the only solution, but it's one idea. Anybody interested in helping on our housing committee? We would sure love your help, because we have a lot to kind of work on related to this. Next, we have Stephanie with us from the water department. I have been wanting to get Stephanie here for over a year. I'm very excited that she's here. She has actually, if you look at many of the landscapes, like our little pork chop park and other things, if you look at the beautiful landscape in a lot of the places in the city, this is the woman who has designed all of that. And she's been around helping us for a long time in terms of many things. And anyway, turn the time over to you if you're ready.
Where's Pork Chop Park?
Turns into Fifth.
Where is Pork Chop Park?
4 South turns into Fifth on the S curve.
That's your name.
Or south a little S curve?
It was named by an engineer because on the plan it looked like a pork chop.
Oh.
It's when they closed the street to put in the trash line. By the way, you're funny. I feel like I would have rather give you a big hug.
So good to see you, I know, we will.
Okay, good. So, hi, everyone.
It's great to see you.
My name.
Something non-controversial.
Oh, we'll see about that.
Let's get it spicy and spicy.
Hey, I can take it. I've been doing this for a while now.
Oh, yeah.
So, give me just a sec. We got this. And Michael is the name. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome.
I really appreciate the help.
Absolutely.
All right, I don't know if I need the mic. I used to be in theater. Do you want me to do it on the mic? I have to turn all this around then.
For the people online, I suppose.
Oh, okay.
Here, we can move the mic.
I don't know what the.
Yep. I love this.
Oh.
Executive act.
Sorry.
Okay.
We love it too.
I'm gonna shorten this a bit. I noticed it was a little bit low for. So now I'm gonna probably be heard 3 houses down and we'll start getting police calls and stuff. So my name is Stephanie Dewar. I'm the Water Conservation Manager with the Salt Lake City Department of Public Utilities. I'm here to talk a bit, sort of big overview of what our water supply situation looks like for the year coming up, and what we can do about it. And so originally it was 30 minutes. Where did Esther go? How much time do I have?
We got a little behind because the
I
fire
know.
department came at the very beginning, so you still have your same time, we're just,
So
it's a
we
little
have,
adjusted.
we have 15 minutes.
But you can do more than that.
Okay.
Stephanie, you
Okay,
can do
so-
more than that.
That's not the right one. What the heck?
Whoa.
No. Oh, that's scary.
What is it? Is that orange?
Hold on. Hold on.
You speak Adobe Live?
No, hold on. Just give me a second. This ain't my first rodeo. Plan B's, baby. Plan B. Okay, there we go. From the beginning.
Oh, look, it had this,
Oh, come on, don't do this with me. Well, then what I'll do is I'll just show it with the notes.
I think it's
It'll
just.
take a second.
There we go. Okay, so, hi. Starting again. So, I don't know if you noticed this, but we're in a drought. I know. Funny thing. So this was May 11 from NIDIS, which is a national organization that collects data from all over the West and actually all over the country, that it compiles from agencies like ours and weather stations all over so that we can identify and also predict drought and potential drought. This is sort of looking at the next view down. So this is a chart that shows us our soil moisture level, only at 2 centimeters, so it's pretty shallow. But still, what it shows us is not only are we in a drought, but our soils are really dry. This makes a difference because, for instance, a few years back we had a low snowfall, but our soils were really moist, so more of that snow ran off. This year we had not a lot of snow. Our soils were somewhat moist, but they weren't really wet, so we had less runoff. So these are the kinds of things we're monitoring and paying attention to pretty much daily and waking up at 2:30 in the morning thinking about. If that doesn't make you feel better, this is our stream flow data. So you can't read this from where you're sitting. I can't read it from where I'm standing. The important story here is the pink is bad, right? So I don't know if you can tell, there's pink and magenta pretty much everywhere and purple on that map. There's not a lot of places where stream flow is good. An example is typically, our water comes off the Wasatch, and our stream flow goes through June, and we typically don't have our peak flows until mid-June to late June. And what that means for us is there might be some stream flow after that, but then we start depending on our reservoir water, which is fine because we know fall and winter are around the corner, and we'll get some rainfall, and then we'll get snowfall, and it's all gonna be golden. But this year, I was gonna ask you if you're all sitting down. We've had our peak flow, and it wasn't even May yet. So we are now in low stream flow mode, which means we're looking at having to use reservoir water considerably sooner than we typically do. And what that means is rather than spending interest, we're spending the principal. Because our reservoirs are what carry us through year to year. And we have good reservoir storage right now. But it's only what it is as long as it stays in the reservoirs. If we use more than what's there, there's no way to refill it unless we have more snow. And we don't know what that looks like. Wow, that was a downer.
Is that Midas also?
It is. No, this is teacup. So this is local.
CCAP?
Teacup?
Teacup.
It's called teacup. And I can send any of these slides to folks if you're interested. This is all from public domain stuff. So this is from Nidus. So this is our outlook. So now I've showed you where we are. This is where we're going. So this is up to date as of I think just about a month ago. But it's the projection through August. And you can see that we're looking dry and hot, right? So we're actually, it's hot. So the slide on the right is temperature. The slide on the left is preset. Preset, we're sort of in the middle. It could go either way. We could be drier than normal or wetter than normal. But what we know we're going to be is hotter than normal. So, yay. Time-wise, any questions on supply?
Super El Nino, is that going to affect it?
Yes. What we're more worried about short-term is the outcome of the discussions around the Colorado River Basin water, because some of our water supply that's in storage comes from that source. So we know what our allocation is at this point, which is not a bad allocation. But if the volume of water that's going to come into that area changes because of those discussions, then the percentage that we get in terms of our storage in that is going to be affected. So that's a more short-term concern for us, is what happens with the Colorado River Compact. Yeah, I love my job. Okay, so this is what we're doing about it. Oh, did you have another
Are you
question?
saying that the reservoirs in Salt Lake County go into the Colorado River?
No, these aren't Salt Lake County. This is Wasatch. So Strawberry and Jarnell are on sort of the backside of the Wasatch. In our service area immediately, we have two reservoirs, Mountain Dell and Little Dell. They're both owned by Salt Lake City. So we can hold that water indefinitely. One of the advantages of being part of Metropolitan Water District of Salt Lake and Sandy is we have access to the water in those other big, federal water projects. But there's a limit on how much water we have, and there's a limit on how long that water can be held for us. The water in our own reservoirs, Mountain Dell and Little Dell, we can hold indefinitely because we own that. So our strategy has always been to maximize our stored water from the Jordanelle Strawberry Complex so that we can hold the other water.
That includes Deer Creek.
Deer Creek, all of that. One of the complexities right now is a number of years ago, we embarked on a project to repair Mountain Dell Dam. It was 100 years old, and that was not a simple project. It's a really rare design of dam. It took a long time, and that reservoir is empty. Now, it's not a very big reservoir, but it's still a reservoir. Little Dell, which is behind it, and one of these days, someone has to explain to me why Little Dell is bigger than Mountain Dell. I've been at this for 25 years, I don't understand. So, anyway, Little Dell is bigger, and that has good storage in it right now. So, these are all our different supplies. We also have wells, right? So we have, the thing we have going for us is Salt Lake City Public Utilities, which by the way is 150 years old now, so we're older than the dam. I have not been in my job that long. We have a really broad portfolio of water. So we've done a good job diversifying where we get our water sources from, but also, more importantly, protecting those. Our watershed protection program is integral to our ability to supply water to our community. So when we have rules up in the watershed, it's because that's our drinking water, and it's literally 12 hours away from your tap. So it's important that we respect and protect the watershed. But we have wells, we have stream, we have reservoirs, so we work really hard to keep that as diverse as possible.
What happens with this big aquifer that's underneath the Great Salt Lake, apparently, or
I'm talking about Salt Lake City water, so can we put that?
Well, I was just wondering if that's part of it. Oh.
I have no idea.
Okay.
But that's not part of our water supply.
Oh, okay.
So our water supply comes from there.
Okay.
And some wells that are between there and Jordan River, mostly. Does that answer your question? Good. I didn't want to not answer. So, what are we doing about this? One is we monitor every day. So every single day we look at where water is being produced, so our 3 water treatment plants, our wells. We collect that data, we put it in a monitoring tool. When we talk about, and I'm going to step back just a tad. When we talk about how much water we have available or how much we have to reduce, it's not as simply saying we have to use 10% less water. Because the question that the administrators, Laura Briefer, Jesse Stewart, and Jason Brown ask is, from which supply? Because our water is different depending on where it comes from in terms of the volume of water. So we look at all these different sources discretely and look at what the impact would be if any individual one of them was reduced or removed from the portfolio, and what do we do about it. So we have spreadsheet worksheets that we work with every day to make these determinations to help us project water supply. So, and that's what this is just a screenshot from one of our tools we use. Then, my job is when those folks do all of that analysis, they tell me, one is that we determine what drought stage we're in, and right now we're stage 2. Stage 2 is, it says mild, but that's just because we have to, there's only so many words you can use before you get to critical, and it's scary, right? So, it's stage 2. What that means right now, stage 2, we need to reduce between 10 million and 24 million gallons of water every single day. The first group that we identify as being required to reduce that water use is actually city properties and other government properties, both indoors and outdoors. Residential properties, commercial properties, industrial, we provide information about voluntary reduction, but their reduction is still an important and critical part of us meeting the goal. So right now our goal is 10 million gallons of water a day. When they tell me that, I use this tool, and you're not going to be able to read that from where you're sitting either. But what this does is they tell me how much water we need to save every day. I've been collecting and analyzing water use data from every single customer classification across our service area. And by the way, it's Salt Lake City, Mill Creek, Holiday, and Cottonwood Heights. So I look at water use data from car washes and tattoo parlors and beauty salons and laundromats and hotels and restaurants and banks and breweries and everywhere else. And what I can do is I plug the numbers they give me into a worksheet, and I can tell you, now I have to put on my glasses, I didn't have to do that, Rocky, when I first started. I can tell you that we need to save 10 million gallons of water every single day. So as you as homeowners, I need you to reduce 29 gallons out of doors every single day and 5 gallons indoors. That's what that 10 million gallons means. Exactly.
Say that again.
29 gallons out of doors each day, 5 gallons indoors. You know what that means? Just be honest with me, because I know if you're using water or not. I'm like bad Santa. So, have you started watering yet? Just tell me. Okay, thank you for being honest. Right now, only water when you need to. But what that means is for 29 gallons a day is whatever your watering schedule is. If you wait one single day to water, if you're typically an everyday waterer, please don't do that. It's wrong. You don't need to. But if you are, just wait a day to water. Be an every other day waterer. Or if you're an every other day waterer, that's still too much. It's more than you need. Wait a day to water. Be a water every 3 days. If you're an every 3 day person,
So what's an average day of outdoor water?
And how much
what do
time?
you mean average day?
How
I don't know what that, I know what you mean by that question. I'm sorry.
So what do you have to do to save 29 gallons outdoors?
You literally have to water one less day in a
That's 1
2-week
day's
period.
water?
No, 29 gallons. Like literally my watering.
29 gallons is one day.
No, okay. What I'm asking you to do is whatever your watering schedule is, wait 1 day to water. Because that will get you more than 29 gallons, and I really need you to do more than 29
If your
gallons.
timer has it every 2 days, change it to every 3
3
days.
days. So 29 gallons, for instance, I have rain barrels, and they hold 60 gallons. So that means twice my volume of my rain barrel water every day. So that rain barrel can last 2 days. Am I answering your question?
Go on.
Okay, thank you.
How much time are we watering to, what's
The goal is, I'm gonna get to that if you'll hold on.
Yeah.
But, so I can actually tell restaurants, everybody individually what they need to do. The city is also trying to do its part. 3 years ago now, we did a study looking at every single meter on every single city property, analyzing how we use water across all of our city properties. We came up with a report, we presented it to city council, to the mayor's office, and we're working on implementing those. By the way, if anyone is curious, the city uses 4.5% of all the water produced on an annual basis. Most of that water goes to our public spaces in terms of parks, schools and places like that. If you want more information about this report, it's online, by the way. So this is what you can do. So I got some specifics. Weighted data water, that's the simplest thing. Nothing is gonna die in a day. Also, never assume you have to water. If your clock, your controller says it's time to water, or if someone else says it's time to water, the simplest thing to do is get a 6 or 8 inch screwdriver, walk on your lawn, and gently punch the screwdriver in your lawn. If it goes in 1.5 inches deep, you don't need to water, because that's where the moisture level is, right? If you can't get it in 1 inch, then go ahead and water. But if it goes in, say even 3 or 4 inches or 5 inches, that's wonderful, and you've got 2 or 3 days worth of water in that soil profile. So weighted data water, and don't assume you have to water. Focus on watering trees, shrubs, and your vegetables. Your lawn is actually, this always surprises people, and it sort of surprises me when they don't know this. What is the single most drought-tolerant plant in your yard?
Grass.
It is grass. Kentucky bluegrass, I love you guys. Kentucky bluegrass will go dormant, it doesn't die. Once it gets cool and it rains again, then it will green up, but it doesn't necessarily need water to survive. It just doesn't look the way we want it to look. So, it's very drought tolerant. Your trees and your shrubs and your veggies, less so. So, be mindful of them, take care of them. And we have specific information and guidelines on how to water trees and shrubs. Also, the Urban Forestry Office has information on how to water trees. Control the controller. Just because your controller tells you it's time to water, don't believe it. Be the boss. Be the boss of your controller. Add mulch. Mulch in areas where you don't have lawn. And actually, you can mulch your lawn. Adding about 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch of mulch on your lawn in spring and fall. Add to the organic material, that matter that's underneath your lawn, make the soil healthier, and it holds moisture. Also, along that line is leave the clippings on your lawn. Don't bag them, right? That's just more mulch and more nitrogen you don't need to add. Get a water check. They're free. They're paid for by the Metropolitan Water District of Salt Lake and Sandy. They're performed by Utah State University. They go from about late May, I think they're starting next week, and they'll go until mid to late August. Someone comes to your house, actually 2 interns. They evaluate your irrigation system, they'll give you a schedule for how to water, but they'll also tell you everything you need to do to make that system better and more efficient, and they'll give you a list so that you can just check down that list and make it all better and make it more efficient. We know for
those interns.
What?
Who do you call or to get?
I have links to that. So the other value of that is what we know from doing water checks is the average irrigation system in the valley here is, so outside of our service area too, is only 53%. And what that means is for every 100 gallons of water that goes on your lawn through your sprinkler system, only 53 gallons of it goes where you want it to go. The rest either goes in the same place that the other 53, so it's not covering the whole lawn, or it goes on the sidewalks or driveways, or hits the house or the fence. That's not helping, right? So
That does not include Salt Lake City?
No, it includes it, but it's broader, because our water checks, it's broader. Because our water checks are managed, are done across a kind of a patchwork area. So fix your irrigation system. Don't worry about the brown spots on your lawn. Don't water for those. Water for everything else, and again, weighted data water. Go bagless, so when you mow your lawn, take the bag off. Those green clippings provide two things I don't understand about gardening. People bag their green clippings and then they put fertilizer on their lawn, and they rake leaves away, and then they go buy mulch and compost. I don't understand. So leave the clippings. It shades the soil and it provides nitrogen. The other thing is mow high. Okay, so I am from Berkeley, but I don't mean what you might be thinking. So what I mean is there is a direct relationship, and this is just science. The longer the blade length, the deeper the roots. So if you let your lawn get taller, your roots will go deeper, which means it will be more resilient as the temperature changes and it gets hotter. So people here have this weird thing about really short lawns. Stop it. Just fight that obsession, okay? Check your sprinklers regularly. I'm going to repeat again, get a water check, and I'll give you the website for that. And then do a smarter lawn. Lawn is not our problem, right? It's really not. We're the problem. It's hard to admit, but we're the problem. We have too much lawn, we overwater it, and we choose the wrong kind of lawn. There's a lot of grasses that use considerably less water. Coincidentally, Salt Lake City Public Utilities now sells one. It's called SLC Turf Trade. We brought it in because nobody was selling it anywhere. You don't have to remove your lawn to plant it. You just kill your lawn, mow it low, put the seed down, mulch it, water for germination.
Check out lawn seed.
Lawn seed, we sell lawn seed, yes. Just a sec, and then I'll call you. And the other thing about it is it uses 40% less water. So Salt Lake, the Utah State Division of Water Resources has a website where if you Google Utah Daily or Utah Weekly Lawn Guide, it will tell you how often to water your lawn. With Kentucky bluegrasses, by the time we get into July and August, they're telling you 2 or 3 times a week, depending on what county. They now have a tab for low water grass based on our grass. They did their own research. Not once in the last 2 years, including last year, which was the hottest and driest summer on record, did SLC Turf Trade grass seed need more than 1 watering a week. 1 watering a week. Our grass at Concord Lift Station hasn't been watered yet all season, and it's some of the greenest lawn in the neighborhood. So just use smarter lawns. And now, ask your question.
Yeah, lots of your seed, you planted it in the section in the back, it's really green, it's really great, it's a really beautiful lawn, it complements on it.
We wanna do our whole.
We wanna do the whole.
I'm gonna give you guys hugs too.
So anyway, if you're wondering about it, it really works.
Go to her house and see it. Okay, so really quick, because I'm a little over time. I'm a little concerned. So I've been doing this gig for a while, and we've had a few droughts. And when we make a call for voluntary reductions during drought, we usually have a really good response from our community. I'll be honest, and this map shows that. So this is again, you're not gonna be able to read it from where you are, but notice the little green triangles going down. That is our trend, that's how much water we use every year, or
Salt Lake Water
produce.
Metro?
This is what?
Is that Salt Lake Metro water?
No, this is Salt Lake City Department of Public Utility
Okay.
Water.
Okay.
This is a report that goes to Central Utah Water Conservancy District. It's called the ULS report. But this is Salt Lake City Department of Public Utilities Service Area, which is Salt Lake City, Holiday, Cottonwood Heights, and Mill Creek. So there's a line that goes down that has a little green triangles on it. That's our water use trend line. The line above is the ULS contract line. So that's a contract, contractually obligated reduction in water use we need to meet. You can see we're well below that. The new state conservation line is that dash line that you can see. If you can just see that, we're already below the goal of that. So we've done well historically. We're doing a really good job. We're not doing well right now. So this is our daily water use chart. So this is something else we look at. So that monitoring I told you about earlier, every day, well, once a week we compile it onto this chart, which I share with the community. The blue line on the top is what we did the year before, in year 2000, before the water conservation position was created. And our peak day that year was 219 million gallons of water in a single day. Now peak day is like usually the hottest day of the year, and it's the biggest water delivery of the year. The red line is a revolving 3-year average. So this year it's 23, 24, and 25. The blue blob is what we use every single day. You can see that there's been times where we've been up above our 3-year average. And right now we're tracking finally on our 3-year average. But I need us to be below our 3-year average if we're gonna meet our 10 million gallon water reduction a day. We're not there. And right now I'm doing some analysis to figure out who. I just pulled up some records of where our biggest water users are from each customer classification. So if it's you, you're gonna get a call from me, just saying. But this is not good. I literally had a nightmare the other night, and my dog woke me up because I was whimpering. When your dog has to wake you up because you're whimpering, that's not good. So we really, and I know this is hard, and I know it's scary, and I know I'm getting calls at parks and things like that. Then tell me, call me, email me, text me, tell me. I will call other people, and I'm not a bully. It's like, hey, how can I help? Can we get you a water check when we do a water map? We have all kinds of tools. One of the tools we have is, one is you can get the water check, and you've got my email address here, and also if you go to SLC Utilities Conservation page, you'll find a link to the water check program. Water maps will tell you how you use water compared to the landscape water need on your property. So you can see the time of year that you have an opportunity to reduce your water use. You can learn about our grass seed program. Rain Girls are gonna be here Monday. Anyone here bought a Rain Girl this year? We've been waiting forever. Monday, woohoo, they're here. We have all kinds of programs. We also promote programs for our commercial customers. We do indoor audits of commercial facilities. Yeah, let's go out and watch me climb a 30-foot tower.
Stephanie, can you touch really quick on the importance of watering trees? We had Gwen Christ here, but she led the effort for East Central Community Council this last year in trying to, she went around with the subcommittee from urban forestry and identified the dead trees in the neighborhood, and then also encourage people to plant trees to keep this canopy green. Put a lot of time, effort, and energy into it.
Yeah, I've never felt that water conservation is contradictory to a healthy urban forest. In fact, the first brochures that the city produced about protecting the urban forest and appropriate watering for trees was produced by the Water Conservation Office. The first information on our websites about protecting trees was on water conservation pages and not on any other page in the city. So, and that's one of the first things I said, remember, when I talked about the tips, was focus on your trees, your shrubs, and your vegetable gardens, right? The lawn is less important, but the important thing with trees is it's important that you water them deeply, less frequently. And that's because of how their roots spread. You want to water trees out towards the outside of their canopy, past their canopy. So watering a tree at its trunk doesn't help that tree. So water it farther out. I know sometimes in an urban setting that can be hard because yards can be small. If you think your tree is going into your neighbor's yard, just check with them. But do be mindful of that and plant trees that are appropriate as we're doing it. I know people have their sycamores, but that may not be the best choice for our valley anymore. But there are other wonderful trees. I understand there's someone waiting to speak after me who's going to talk about the kinds of trees to plant. And there's great trees that are very resilient. But yeah, our urban forest is critical. In fact, lawn under trees uses less water than lawn in full sun. And if you're concerned that your lawn won't grow well under a tree because it doesn't like shade, well, guess what? I have a grass seed for you because it's mostly Pine-Tall fescue and it loves the shade. But it does well in sun too, just in case. Did that answer your question? Thank you. Any other questions? Yes.
Does the city send out that brochure? All these suggestions are great. So it would be good to know a lot of that when starting out, because it took me a while to figure out when to water my grass, and then I waited to water my trees, and now one of my Japanese maples is kind of dying.
Well, some of the, there was a lot there, and I'm going to pack all of it. I haven't mailed a brochure for a long time. It's expensive, and I don't have a budget for it, so I do rely on our webpage, social media, community council meetings like this, and getting out into the community. We do post up on Instagram and things, and we do tips. I know there's a lot of fun stuff out there, but then when they need somebody to talk seriously about water, they bring me in, and I'm it's like, I need you to use less water, and only water 1 day a week, so that's me. So yes, we use mostly those other platforms. The next question was about knowing when to water and how to water. The issue with Japanese maples right now and other trees, I suspect some of it though was the freeze we had. We had two night freezes about 3 weeks apart, and trees with really thin bark and tender sheaths around buds had damage. The trick with those is leave them be, but water them deeply because they're right now experiencing some stress. But actually with some deep watering and maybe a little sweet talk, they'll start budding out again. I'm seeing a lot of Japanese maples. For instance, almost all your trees that are have leaflets, so all the nut trees, ornamental pistache, machias, Kentucky coffee trees, all of those trees had damage in the frost, but they're all re-leafing. So some of what you're seeing might be that, so be mindful of that. My suggestion. And if you have any other questions, pardon?
Could help us our recovery.
Yeah, and so again, hold off on pruning until you start seeing some of those buds. A way to check is really gently with your thumb, just scratch the surface of the bark really tenderly, and if it feels supple, or you can see a little bit of green underneath, that wood is alive. Or feel the buds themselves, and if they feel supple and soft, don't break them off because then that kind of defeats the purpose, then you'll know that that is living tissue. Okay, So be patient to prune. Also, I'm here to help. I mean, that's my job. I do get to do a lot of analysis and fun data set and really fun spreadsheets, but I'm here for you. I work for you. So if you need something, if you have a question, reach out to me. I think, well, I had, good Lord, what's happening here? My email address is stephanie.doer@slc.gov, same as everybody else's. I think it's on the thing. Thank you. Okay, I will do that. I'm gonna just get this thing out of the just needs
Thank you, isn't this
I'm
great?
staying.
Yeah, great information.
Should I stay or should I?
The first person I want you to come audit is my hubby. When you come to my house and help me.
That sounds scary.
Okay, yeah, well, now we've got Tim from the mayor's office who's gonna give us some great information.
I'll be really, I'll try
Hey,
to.
we're good, we're good. We're just gonna do what we can here.
I did put, thank you, Stephanie, I did put Stephanie's information, I put the QR code on the front desk, just because I wish I could take her with me everywhere I go. Her information, so helpful, yeah.
Oh.
Let's take this one out here for a second.
He's gonna use it.
Oh, I thought you said you were gonna use it, Tim, I'm so sorry. I
have mine,
misunderstood.
I have it on mine.
Okay.
I presented last March, was it? Back in March, when the mayor was proposing her budget. She had worked with all the department chairs to come up with the new fiscal year 2026, 2027 budget, and I wanted to come back. She gave her presentation to City Council a week ago Tuesday, so May 5th. We had just a little bit of a budget refresh. We have a citywide budget of $2 billion, $2,087 million. It's kind of a little bit misleading because you think we have all these funds to expend. The majority of that are enterprise funds, are for the airport, for public utilities. Those are fees that don't receive taxes, so they just go directly for the service that you're being provided for. What we're really working on is from the general fund, and if you can see up there, it's $498,863,053. The majority of this is the police department with 28%, and the fire department with 12%. And then 911 with 2%, so that's roughly 40% of our budget is going to the public service.
So where is public utilities, the water,
This is just from the general fund.
public services?
Those are enterprise funds.
Okay.
So the mayor focused on safe neighborhoods, reliable infrastructure, clean water, maintaining parks, youth programs, because we had those services cut from federal funding this year, fire response, and street repairs. If you remember, we talked about economy of scales, the micro level and the macro level. So while Salt Lake City is a city of 217,000 people at nighttime, we're roughly 400,000 people in the daytime. So you're providing for a city roughly twice the size. So you can see immediately the demands for services and resources that we have to provide at a larger level, at a larger scale. Those inflationary costs that we've had to meet this year, just for an example, our firefighters, 23% increase in their uniforms. A ton of asphalt, 45% increase for a ton of asphalt. And then just replacing an intersection light is doubled. So our mayor and the department chair, she put a request working with them to go back and cut 5%, find 5% efficiencies in each one of your departments. We had some savings of 13.2 million that resulted in. And it was tough. I mean, we have a lot more requests and demands for services and increases for those expectations than we have cut. But through that process, we were able to save 13.2 million. Now, property tax, we're limited by the state with what we can do. We have to go through truth and taxation, so that monies have to be connected to the tax that we're asking for an increase. And this is a breakdown of where that money is going to. So to meet those needs, the mayor has requested a proposed property tax increase to generate the 13.5 million. This, and I'll get to that $9.87 in the next slide. But just to show you what those resources are being prioritized for capital improvements, our fire response. So we needed additional support because the caseload for our courts is just off the charts. It just keeps growing and growing. Our lighting, our maintenance. Let's see, 28%. So that 13.5 million relates to 28% of your total property tax that's being increased. It's not the entire property tax that you're asked to pay for. The city's portion is roughly 28% of that, just to be clear. So how will this impact your bill? So if your home value is estimated at $400,000, that's about $6.32 a month, or as Esther has asked me to point out, $75.84 a year. Did you pay your property taxes by the year? For $624,000 home, that value estimation is $118.44 a year. And for a home value of $900,000, that's $14.23 a month, or $170 a year. We also show the impact on commercial property. You can see that here online. And then this year we have changes to our public utilities, and that just coincided with the year. It's always tough when we try to find those efficiencies, and then when push comes to shove, we have new water department treatment, or water treatment plant. So the proposed water and sewer rates, and I can point to Jason Brown over here, he's our expert with public utilities, he'll help me answer any questions in this area. But for residential high use, in my understanding, residential minimum use is that you don't really have an outdoor, like you don't have a yard, you're in-house.
Fairly limited use, yeah, so mostly indoor use.
So it's mostly limited in indoor use. I put this QR code up here and in the back, and if you want, there's a property calculator that you can type in you can scan this code or go to the web page, type in your address, and that'll help you calculate the cost that you're being charged with those fees. And then we also had Stephanie Dower here. If you had questions on water conservation, because we are in a drought, I wanted to make sure you had her contact information. That's also on the front desk if you want to scan this QR code. So the public utilities increases that we're facing at the same time, about $1.75 per month is for our stormwater drains. proposed increase for $2.60 a month will go for lighting, and then the $3.29 per month increase will go for waste and recycling.
When does this go into effect?
So you have an opportunity to contact your city council, share your concerns. They have their first public hearing Tuesday, May 19th. The second one is June 2nd. And then the city council votes on it by the end of June 30th. Then we have truth in taxation that also, by state mandate, has to be heard by August 11th. And that's 7 p.m. the 19th and 7 p.m. on the June 2nd. So my main concern is just to make sure that you have an opportunity to provide any input. Try to make this very accessible. We have it on our webpage. It's on the city council's webpage. It's on the finance webpage. I also have these little cards that I put on the table. You can scan the QR code and take one of these home so you have it with you, so you don't have to write it down. We also have, I've left out on the back table the affordable resource guide. It has some resources. I know being on fixed income and having to face the need, the challenges of these increases can be challenging. So I wanted to make sure you provided some information there. I also touched base, I don't know, do you know Nick Johnson? Are you familiar with Nick? Yeah, Nick's the city council liaison for District 4. So he's also very accessible. The city council has reinforced to him and to me that they want to hear from you, from District 4. So they've made their email address council.comments@soc.gov to make sure that they're hearing from District 4 for the budget. Also, there's a 24-hour hotline that you can call and comment and leave a message, 801-535-7654. I'll make sure Esther has that information. And then, of course, the website, you can also, those 3 website locations, the mayor's, the finance, and the city council, you can leave comments on there. Any questions from you? Yes.
Is there also county property tax being?
Yeah, so the city operates on a fiscal year budget, so we go from July 1st through June 30th. The county operates on a calendar year budget, so they did their property tax increase January. So you'll see that on your property taxes, and then ours will be the following fiscal year. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Tim, years ago, we were known as one of the best golf bargains in the country with our golf courses. And it was an enterprise fund where golfers supported, that was the sole source of funding for our golf courses. I don't know what stage, I wasn't really paying attention to what was happening with our golf courses after a while. But now taxpayers are supporting, they're subsidizing the golf course, city golf courses. Has there been any discussion at all about returning golf courses back to an enterprise fund basis?
I know that in the limited part of this budget, the golf courses took a hit because the golf courses they identified that they were doing very well, that they're doing more profitable. So they're not subsidized, I guess you'd say, as opposed to like the enterprise funds that would pay for it just directly. And that changed a few years ago, back before this administration. But I know for this budget that they felt golf courses are doing well enough, they don't need as much of city taxpayers.
But it's still not, they're still not an enterprise fund.
Correct.
They're still not self-subsidizing.
Correct, yeah. I think maybe some of them are, but not all of them. in this budget, there was to cut back on the subsidy for the golf, and let their fees pay for it itself.
Let them support themselves.
Any other questions? All right, and please feel free to contact me. I'm available, 801-598-8047.
We're really lucky to have Tim. Tim was with us once before, but he is also the citywide liaison for the mayor's office. He takes care of a lot of projects like the whole Temple Square reopening situation and everything else he's got going. Next, we've got Josh Quigley, who is also on our board. Josh is the one who actually helped redesign the 12 East Islands for us. Sent it into the city as a CIP application, and we're using a lot of that design, so that's pretty fun.
Yeah. Let's see, we'll get all stuff first. Hopefully. Awesome. Great. Let's talk about plants.
A little closer to
A little closer. Let's talk about plants. Like I just said, my name is Josh Quigley. I'm a licensed landscape architect, and I specialize in native and low water landscapes for our local ecoregion.
Can everybody hear Josh?
So we'll talk. Was that better?
Yeah, I just, you can pull it, I think you can pull it up, maybe not.
There we
Sorry, I
go.
made it really short.
That's better. All right. So today is just going to be a brief overview of some basic and accessible plants that do well in Utah. You know, there's this big discussion about reducing our water use, primarily with landscaping. And there's a lot of options out there that a lot of people may not know are readily available that we can start to transition over that still look very lush and very beautiful. We have a very mature neighborhood. We have large mature trees, sort of a lush older neighborhood aesthetic. And we don't have to lose that. We can still go low water, we can still go native and still have a very green, lush aesthetic. And so we'll just go into some ways that we can do that. First things first, I think we want to establish is the difference between xeriscaping and xeriscaping. Xeriscape, it's a rock-filled landscape with no plants. So there's nothing there, it's zero, right? Zero anything. These are hot, they're exposed, and they look bad, let's just be honest. Xeriscaping, that's a landscape filled with native or low water plants, and it's designed to fit the local climate. It uses very little water, and it can still be very lush and very green. And so that's the biggest kind of misconception of xeriscaping is we see these xeriscapes where it's all rocks. It looks like crap, it gets full of weeds, full of trash, and it's high maintenance and it looks ugly. And then it gives low water native landscapes a very bad image, a very bad rap. So yeah, here's some bad examples. The problem with these xeriscapes is that they're hot and exposed. When you use this rock mulch, it retains so much heat, and it actually helps evaporate your soil moisture quicker. So whatever few plants you do have left in these xeriscapes, or whatever trees you do have remaining, you actually end up having to water more to maintain the same soil moisture levels. Plant roots aren't happy, they're too hot, plants get stressed. It contributes to urban heat effect. Even though it is technically a landscape area, it's still acting like if it was just concrete or asphalt. And you end up doing far more weeding and far more maintenance. Here's an example of an older house with some mature trees that was transitioned to a xeriscape. And some of the problems with this is when you do add these types of landscapes around existing mature trees with their root networks, you can often slowly kill the tree. When you strip out what was maybe a mulch or grass or planting covered landscape with rock, you're completely changing the local system that tree grew or matured in. And so we see this a lot in Salt Lake Park specifically, where in our park strips, we have these beautiful, huge mature trees, and then we rip out whatever was underneath it, we put in weed fabric, we put in rocks, and then the tree starts to slowly scorch and die and suffocate. And there's better ways to do this. So xeriscaping, we avoid rock mulch, we use wood mulch, we use denser plantings. That's when the soil is shaded by plants, it actually increases our soil moisture. Not as much moisture is getting evaporated. The irony of this method is more is less. More plants is actually less watering. Often it's less weeding, it's less maintenance. It creates a cooler yard, and this acts like a nutrient-dense sponge that holds water in our soil. And so if we go xeriscaping with more plants and wood mulch, we can actually lower the water than if we had, say, a gravel yard with a couple of onesie-twosie grasses and trees that we actually still have to water very frequently in order to maintain soil moisture. And again, those xeriscapes can still be very lush, very green. Ironically, some of the best, most successful xeriscaping yards, you actually wouldn't even know. You wouldn't even call it xeriscaping. You're just walking down the street and you see a lush, beautiful, green, mature yard, and it may be 80% native plants, mostly adapted, and they're watering once a week, maybe even once every 2 weeks. The best xeriscapes are the most lush and green and happy. Oh yeah, here's a good example of, and tactics to do these is, choosing plants that spread and fill in gaps. Grasses and shrubs and perennials, mixed, much less watering, slow retains water, and choosing things that are going to fill in gaps. So when we do these onesie-twosie plantings, it's just creating it's a barren yard. You guys have all seen in the neighborhood, right? These people that transition their yards to xeriscapes, and it doesn't work long term. More is less. That's just what I try to tell people. The evils of weed fabric. So I don't know if any of you. So we see this everywhere, right? So quick history lesson. Weed fabric got really popular in the landscape industry about 10, 15, 20 years ago. It was branded as this solution in the early stages of growing low water. Hey, you put this down, you put rocks and mulch over it. You don't have any plants, you don't have any weeds. It's great, low water, low maintenance, and that's not what happens. It may do that for the first 1 to 2 years, but weeds grow on top of it anyways. It really starts to deteriorate after 5 or 7 years, and within 10 years, you're having to rip it out. It's peeking through the cracks. And it actually does a lot of damage. It kills the soil microbiome. It slowly suffocates plant roots. It's actually very damaging for our mature trees in our neighborhood as well. You're basically just capping all the interaction between the atmosphere and all the different microbiomes and insects and fungi, and it just becomes a long-term maintenance nightmare. I think it's pretty telling that a lot of municipalities and a lot of landscape architecture firms or even commercial landscape contractors are no longer doing weed fabric because it's becoming such a liability. It was very popular 10, 15 years ago, became standard, and now we're reaping the havoc of it later, and it's become such a nightmare and a liability, and it's killing trees, and it's just actually so much more work later on, but a lot of people are actually avoiding it. And I think that's very telling when the people in the industry are saying, hey, we're done, we're not doing this anymore. We don't recommend this. And again, just some examples of weed fabric. The mulch slides off, it doesn't keep weeds down for more than 1 or 2 years. And then you're having to pull the weeds out of the weed fabric, and now they're anchored in the ground. And I don't know, has anyone experienced this in their?
Would you mind, Josh, if I add one other thing?
Of course, yeah.
I think the term weed fabric is a misnomer. It's not fabric, it's plastic with holes in it.
That's an excellent point.
And so be mindful of that, because also that weed fiber, that fabric, plastic fabric, is going to be around for about 500 years.
Is it releasing PFASs?
I don't know that specifically, but I know it's primarily plastic.
It's usually PVC based.
Yeah, and so like most plastics, it takes about 500 years to break down, and even then the finest particulates don't.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to throw that in, I'm sorry.
It takes 500 years to break down, but I mean, within 5 to 7 years, it's already deteriorating. And
I know, and it's useless.
And then it's useless, and then it looks like crap, and then it just looks like trash in the air. I mean, we've all seen it, rocking around the internet, right? And so,
Thank you.
Evils of weed fabric. Don't do it.
Thank you very much.
And don't put it around mature trees. If you want to kill a happy mature tree slowly, that's the way to do it. So real quick, I just wanted to go over some trees and perennials and shrubs that are readily available at local nurseries that I've used successfully in a lot of projects that I have in my backyard. Things that, there's a big talk about going all native, right, which is fantastic, but the reality is a lot of native plants just aren't available. They aren't cheap, and they're very seasonal or hard to find. And so I try to emphasize a balance of native plants with adapted plants and hybrid plants. And so some trees that I use and I really enjoy, I can just show photos of these real quick. So one that you can't go wrong with, I love service berries. I'm just going to pull up photos real quick because service helps, or photos help. So service berry trees are fantastic, small ornamentals that are shockingly tough for how dainty they look. These are a great alternative to Japanese maples if you kind of want that aesthetic. And they have 3 season interests. They've got beautiful spring flowers. They have delicious berries that are very closely related to blueberries and taste similarly in the summer. And then their fall color is just this gorgeous scarlet and orange, almost like a rainbow mosaic of greens, yellows, and oranges. Most cultivars do fantastic in Utah, but service berries are lovely.
They're Western natives, aren't they?
There are. We have, there's a Saskatoon serviceberry cultivar that's native to our
That was
areas.
our product, some of the earliest ones.
Yeah, we have a couple native species and cultivars from Utah that do very well. They're more shrubby, but the tree versions from the Midwest do very well here as well. One that I have found to be actually really fantastic is catalpa, and these are a tree that look so lush and tropical, but actually do shockingly well in Utah and can be very quite drought tolerant. They've actually naturalized throughout the Southwest and southern Utah. They all took the freeze pretty hard this year, but they're all coming back very well. Related to the catalpa is our actually native desert willow. This is a native tree that's becoming more readily available from southern Utah. And these things are tough, and here in northern Utah, once you establish them, they really don't need much, if any, supplemental water. And they bloom these beautiful pink and white flowers all summer long. This is a fantastic ornamental alternative that's becoming a lot more available.
Can you plant those in parking strips?
I have one, I have 3 in my park strip, and I put 2 of the neighbors as well, but don't tell them. And then one I just wanted to go over is the chitalpa, which is actually a hybrid between the catalpa and our native desert willow. So this is an even essentially more ideal large shade tree or medium shade tree for Utah, because it's a hybrid of this big shade tree that's gorgeous, as well as our native desert willow that is super tough and loves our soils and environment. Can't recommend these enough. They're super tough. They're super pretty. It's hard to kill them, except cold. But we are not as cold as we used to be anymore. So. Catalpas can be messy.
They're beautiful, but messy.
So typically plant them in planting beds, but free mulch. So. Some other good ones are mulberries and hackberries. Fruitless mulberry if you don't want to do with the fruit. There's a lot of fruitless cultivars that just become gorgeous shade trees. Hackberries are fantastic. I use them a lot in park strips. They're a very tough urban tree with very deep roots, so they don't raise up the concrete, which is really nice. And then elms. Elms used to be a very huge part of our urban treescape. A lot of them and a lot of older American elms died out over the last few decades, but there's some new cultivars that do fantastic. 2 that I love to use are Frontier Elm and Alley Elm. I can just show photos real quick.
Are they less weedy than the elms, the wheat elms?
So the elms you're thinking of are the Siberian elm. So no, these are not related to those. They're different. But these have a very kind of vase arching form. They're a fantastic street tree for Utah.
And they've mostly been hybridized and crossed with disease-resistant forms, so they've overcome the blights and such that were imperiling our native urban, or not urban, but we had native elm trees.
Yeah,
and
so
much improved.
about a century ago, 70% of American street trees was a single tree. It was the American elm, and about 50, 60 years ago, they all died out from disease.
From imported Dutch disease.
And so these are hybridized and adapted versions, and this is not the Siberian Chinese elm that grows everywhere. This is much more manageable. So.
How big do these get? How big are these? Are they big trees?
They are medium to medium large. They won't get really large until I'm retired. So.
You didn't have any columnars.
So one columnar I love is actually a cultivar hackberry. I'll show a regular hackberry first. So hackberries are a lovely tough urban tree. Just a good standard medium-sized tree that does extremely well in our park strips. But a cultivar that's fantastic is called Prairie Sentinel. I use this a lot as a very low water, heat-loving, tough columnar. And so this is a good mid-sized columnar tree. And this is pretty readily available these days. But this is my go-to columnar tree. It's probably the toughest of the columnar trees you can find on the market right now.
So toughest means temperature resistant, low water.
Temperature, low water exposure.
Supports are multiple,
yeah,
soil types.
Exactly, yeah. Most of the columnar oaks really struggle here. Shrubs. And again, I want to preface, a lot of these plants I'm showing these are plants that I have experience with, so there's a bias and preference in what I like as well. But these are ones that I can confidently say do very well in our neighborhood and are successful in all of our projects. So there is a bias here, just understand that. But, some shrubs that do fantastic. Most cultivars of Rocky Mountain juniper, junipers in general. Junipers have a bad rap, but there are some fantastic new cultivars that have hit the market that are very beautiful. They can be very large, they can be very wide, they can be very narrow and columnar and fit a lot of niches. And these are pretty readily available, and it's a native tree, so I mean, it's extremely tough. Typically, once you establish them, they don't need any supplemental water here in northern Utah. If you want more of a calmer one, Blue Arrow is a good cultivar. So avoid Skyrocket, that was one of the first ones. It looks great for 15 years and then it falls over. Don't do Skyrocket. I'll show you Skyrocket.
It's supposed to take off now.
This is Skyrocket. It will fall over after 15 years, so don't do that. Some more shrubs that I really love. A native shrub that has become far more readily available is called fernbush. So this is native out to the West Desert, and it becomes this beautiful sort of lush semi-evergreen tree, or not tree, shrub with these almost fern-like leaves. And it has these stunning white flowers that look very similar to lilac flowers in midsummer. No cultivar, it's just native out to the West Desert, so out in the Upper Mountains, out to the Nevada state line. This is probably one of my favorite native shrubs, and it's become very readily available just in the last 5 years. And this is one that once it's established, you never have to water it again, and it looks so lush and full. Highly recommend. Manzanita is another native shrub that's become extremely available. Let's do, what is this? So these can be fantastic, sort of like this vivid green ground cover shrub. It only gets about a foot or two high, and they can just sprawl. These do fantastic in park strips. They tolerate park shade surprisingly well. And this is another one where after you establish it here in northern Utah, they don't need any supplemental water. But this is just a gorgeous one if you want bright green all year long. Let's see, what's that good one here? Sumac. So 3-leaf sumac, specifically some readily available cultivars that are low grow. I'm sure you guys have seen this one. This has become one of the most popular native shrubs in the last decade. This is just a fantastic, super tough, super versatile, low-growing shrub. It can do fine and shade, full sun. It does great in park strips. The cultivar that I prefer is called Autumn Amber. So this cultivar is actually pulled out of southern Utah because it loves to cascade and spill over rocks. And so that's kind of its natural environment. It's more of a spiller on the sides of cliffs. And so I love to use this to cascade over walls or the edges of pots. This one's fantastic. It's just got such a lovely droopy form. You can zoom in and see. And a fantastic ground cover in full sun to park shade. What other shrubs are good? Let's see what's over time. I'll keep moving on. Perennials. One of my favorite perennials for Utah, and it is sort of Utah Central, is penstemon. We have the highest diversity of penstemon species anywhere in the world. Mountain West is it's where penstemons evolved, and so some of my favorite penstemon species. And if you see a plant at the nursery and it's a penstemon, just buy it. It'll do fine. It'll do great here. Virtually all penstemons cultivars available are hybridized with our local Western ones. So firecracker penstemon is one of my favorites. This thing is a plant that needs no supplemental water once established. It's got these gorgeous red spikes in May and June that look like firecrackers.
Hummingbirds like it.
We love them. One that's very available, you can find this one sometimes even out at Home Depot now, is called Foothill penstemon. This is this gorgeous blue low growing one. It makes a fantastic sort of ground cover. They're lovely. And what's lovely about penstemons is almost all of them are evergreen. And so they have the beautiful green foliage all through the winter, which is fantastic. And then Rocky Mountain penstemon is just a classic, and this you can find in most nurseries. And again, lovely evergreen, beautiful purple flowers in the spring and summer. If you see a penstemon anywhere, it'll do fine here. It'll do great here. Yes?
When you say once established, it doesn't need water?
So you water it pretty thoroughly after you plant it, and then frequently throughout the first season. But
So
after that,
like 1 year?
1 year.
And then it's on its own?
And then it's usually completely fine. So. And most penstemons are that way. So. Another perennial I love are Adistachy. And so this is another one where there are now tons of cultivars on the market. Ones that are hybridized with our native species, ones that are just climate adaptive. But for the most part, if you see an Adistachy, it'll do great here. And I love to pair penstemons with Adistachys because penstemons are your spring bloomers. And then right when those are starting to fade out, the Adistachys come into play, and then it's their show until the first frost in September or October. And so they fill that same niche of cupular flowers that pen stamens and a lot of pollinators
You got
love.
a picture of
Oh, what?
Butterfly, are they butterflies?
Oh yeah. Butterflies, pollinators love these. My favorite one, which is just kind of the traditional Southwest native, is just Sunset Adistachy. What's great about this one is it will readily reseed and fill in some of the hard to plant gaps in your yard. So yeah, Sunset. This is just fantastic. This is from Arizona, New Mexico. Other great ones, yarrow. Again, if you see any type of yarrow, most cultivars will be fantastic here and will also gently spread and fill in gaps. Guara is probably one of my favorite, another one, I keep saying favorite, they're all my favorites.
Favorites.
So Guara is fantastic.
Do they come with wolves? Boxes.
So there's a lot of cultivars
I don't think
out
they're
there.
allowed, I saw, right?
Probably not, no. So what's great about these is these just provide such a lovely dainty look to landscapes. These are another extremely tough perennial. Most of these are from the Midwest and the Southwest. And so these will start blooming from about now all the way until frost, which is fantastic. Again, pollinators love these. There's some hybridized cultivars with some native forms that have colonized the West. These are just, I can't recommend Guara enough. Just so playful, whimsical. They're a whimsical flower.
So what kind of water needs do they have after they're in?
Once a week, if that, once every 2 weeks. So, let's see.
Do you ever plant partridge feather?
I do have partridge feather in my yard, and it does need more water than most things.
It hasn't been our yard most year. It's been almost no water.
Blue flax is fantastic. That's one that'll gently fill in all the gaps. Desert 4 o'clock. Okay, this is one of my favorites.
Do you have any that aren't?
No. This presentation is my favorites. So Desert 4 o'clock. It was a historically rare perennial that has become far more common in nurseries the last 3 to 5 years. And so what's amazing about this flower is it looks like petunia. It blooms like petunia. You might think it's a petunia, but it's very much not. It creates this huge sprawling ground cover from a single taproot that goes down about 10 feet. This is one that you can plant it, water it for the first month, and then never water it again. And the way that this plant works is after the first frost, the entire plant will freeze, dry out, and you just pop it off with a single root, and then just put it in your compost bin or put it wherever. And solo maintenance, so easy. It'll leaf out right about now, and then within a month, it'll just sprawl about 4, 5, 6 feet. And these are fantastic for park strips. I have them in my park strip if you want to come see them. And it's a fantastic alternative to a petunia, because a petunia you gotta water every day in the summer. Whereas this, you will never water again.
At least every day.
Maybe twice a day sometimes.
So what's the name of that one again?
That was Desert 4 o'clock.
Where would you go to buy that?
So that's at places like Mill Creek Gardens or Glover Nursery. I saw them once at the Smith's Garden Center back when they had that really cool lady running the nursery. She's gone, and now some of the cool stuff is gone.
Sterling Empire also has that.
And then a couple grasses. You can't go wrong with blue grama. This is the famous native grass that has quickly become one of the most popular. I'll show you a good cultivar, Blonde Ambition. This is the most common. But this is a grass that is just so stunning, so beautiful, has year-round interest, and this is another grass that once you establish it, it needs no supplemental water. They're fantastic, they're tough. This is native all throughout Utah. It grows a lot smaller out in the wild, obviously, but it gets the medium-sized grass that just does fantastic here. Cannot recommend enough. It's sort of become a bread and butter in the low water nursery trade. And while not native, but does very well here, is blue oak grass. This is a medium to large size grass that has a beautiful sort of sprawling blue form. It's much bigger than blue fescue, which is what you're probably thinking, which, my personal opinion, blue fescue does not do that well here. I think it's a bit of a scam because it's sold nationwide because it's very easily to germinate and propagate. And it's actually native to the mountains of Europe, so it's kind of branded as this low water desert plant. It's from the forests of Switzerland, so don't be cool.
There is an Idaho
Idaho
native
Fest.
to the bitter roots and to the snake,
do have a lovely native version that looks pretty similar and does far better. Idaho fescue.
It's the sheep fescue.
So Idaho fescue does far better. It's harder to find, but it does perform much better than blue fescue.
Something good comes out of Idaho.
Blue Idaho. They're pretty different. Anyways, yeah, I think I'm taking up too much time, but a couple local nurseries that I love. High Country Gardens, they're online ordering, but they have all of these plants that I listed and so many more. No, they're actually based out of Colorado.
No, they, actually High Country Gardens is now here. It used to be out of New Mexico. David, someone passed away, someone bought it, and now they're out of here, but they were bought recently by a larger company, so they're much more regional now than they were.
I know they're doing a big transition. Okay. But yeah, fantastic people, lovely to work with. Anything on that website is fantastic. Have you worked with them before, or do you?
Yeah, I actually knew Dave Sumlin was a friend of mine. He founded Santa Fe Nursery, and then the online presence was High Country Gardens, and he passed away a few years ago.
They're fantastic. They introduced so many of the species and cultivars that.
And that was the old High Country. I don't know, that was mostly David Sumlin, Harlan Hermannick, and Dale Lindgren. Introduced almost every penstemon in the market.
Oh yeah. Oh, and some of the new, they've released a couple new hybrids in the last 3 years that are fantastic. So they're doing the good work bringing low water native plants to the mass market, which is fantastic.
Plant Select is a really good resource.
Plant Select is fantastic. And then some local nurseries, Glover, Mill Creek, perennial favorites, Progressive Plants for shrub and trees, not a fan of some of their perennials. And then surprisingly, Smith's Garden Center, just down the street, actually has some penstems in throughout, lots of yarrow and hadastaki, and some low water plants if you know how to look. So yeah. I was going to have a photo of my yard, but I didn't get to it in time, so that was going to be the stage.
Thank you, Jeff.
Sorry, we're so late. No, you're fine.
Did we do this already?
Yes.
Okay.
I heard somebody say, did we do this already? Yeah, I guess this is the third time you've seen some of the slides, or understand what's going on, maybe? Today?
Some of us need to go through it.
Oh, yeah. You had
Learning theory.
That's the, oh, that's right.
I'm kind of slow.
Tim stole your thunder.
That's okay. Well, first of all, if you have had this done already, are there any questions right now that you're just referring, waiting to ask? About, yeah, right. Okay, let's get there first. So I'm Jason Brown, Deputy Director of Public Utilities. So I'm here to talk about the rates, rate increases. You heard what was previously presented in our budget, or the mayor's budget. I have those slide decks. I also have the slide deck for when our director, Laura Briefer, went in front of the council to do in a working session to present those slides. A lot more details in that slide. Probably not going to get to all of that, so I cut it down a little bit to just talk about some of the major points. But one of the first things I wanted to make sure everybody's aware of is how to get to that rate calculator that was mentioned earlier. So if you go to the Salt Lake City website and then come down to Public Utilities, and there's the rate changes is right here. It's the first one on the left. If you click on that, there's a lot of great information on there. Conservation, all of the water resources we have listed are there, and then this is the rate calculator. And you can select water, sewer, and walk through it. It's best if you have your bill there, because it asks questions from your bill that you need to fill in there, and that helps get a more accurate bill. What's unique about, well, everybody here is a unique water user. They have different patterns. We talk about the high users, the medium users, the low users. Every one of you can fit in that category, but you probably do fit in that category at some point in the year. So it's really sometimes difficult to say this is your average water user, because everybody uses water at different rates and at different times throughout the year. So we try to show those just as a range of this is where you're going to be in this next year. So let me pull up the slides here. So you may be asking, what what is this, the money that we pay, what is that, where does that get us? I wanted to highlight a few of these projects that we've been doing over the last few years, generational projects. In the 1960s, 1970s, when the Clean Water Act was enacted, there was a lot of federal funding to get clean water. That's where we got about 70% of the funds for the water treatment plants, the reclamation facilities, pipes, tanks. That's where it came from. About 70% of it came to through federal funding. Now we're here, 60 years later. A lot of that infrastructure is aging, and we've done a lot of maintenance on it to maintain it. But when you get to the concrete, the core of the buildings, 60 years on concrete in a really tough environment, it's not going to last much longer. So now it's becoming a point where we're going to have to replace those. Unfortunately, they were all built about the same time, so they all start to fail at the same time. So we are trying to spread that out so that the next generation, when we get to that point, doesn't have to deal with all this infrastructure having to come, major infrastructure having to come due for replacement at the same time. Yes?
Sorry, what is the water reclamation facility?
Right, great question. So, let's see, I'm going to answer that question short, or I got a longer answer.
Short is good.
Short is good. So where your sewer goes, when you flush your toilet, we take it, we treat it, make sure that it's clean, and then discharge the water into the Great Salt Lake.
So you don't then recycle it?
Doesn't come back, no, we don't have a water recycling
Like
system.
they just opened in Orem. Aren't you jealous?
We actually made a decision to donate that, or basically to grant that water to the Great Salt Lake to support the lake as one of the few sources of clean water going to it. That means we have to do more conservation, but we felt as a utility it was a worthwhile decision to make. Also, the expense of pumping that water back up the hillside towards all these houses would be a lot more than all these projects.
Yeah.
Sorry, Jason.
You're fine, it's great, thank you. We did look at that though, we looked at it, and like Stephanie said, it requires a whole second system of water pipes to push it all the way back up the hill. We use gravity to get the sewer down there, and to then have to pump the cleaner water back up, it's really expensive. So, and that's one of the great parts about working for Salt Lake City, and I think it's a really great thing for the community. We have a department within Salt Lake City that gets to manage the water from the top of the mountains all the way to the Great Salt Lake and every place in between. And we take that very seriously. We have a lot of regulatory requirements that we have to report on, and clean drinking water, making sure we're managing the discharge that goes, the stormwater that gets discharged off the streets and into the streams, and then eventually Jordan River to the Great Salt Lake. All that falls under our responsibility. And it's one of the best parts of the job to be able to have that. I'm actually getting a little goosebumps of being able to do that, because it's such a huge impact to so many people, the quality of life. I don't know if there's doctors or medical people here, but as a civil engineer, I like to say that, for public health, we provide clean water and get rid of the sewage of the waste. That's more for public health than any other profession that I can think of. So don't take offense, that's just my opinion. So as I mentioned, all that system that we have in place is aging. Salt Lake City is it's the oldest water provider in Utah for sure. It's probably in the top 2 or 3 in western United States. We started the water at City Creek was converted the day before the pioneers arrived to provide irrigation and culinary water, drinking water at the time. So, and you heard Stephanie talk about our water supply being part of Metropolitan District of Salt Lake and Sandy.
District of Salt Lake and Sandy.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And the Central Utah Project, all those projects, all that stuff was built for us at this time, and they've done a lot of planning, resiliency in our water sources, all that stuff, that infrastructure was there, and we get to utilize it today. So as we move forward, we want to have that same mindset where we're thinking. We want to make sure that we're building and constructing is going to be able to support not only us now, but those in the future that are around. So some of these are the generational projects we've talked about. We're talking about the water reclamation facility, the sewer side of things, the rehabilitation of City Creek. It's more of a, we totally had to reconstruct it, in City Creek. This is City Creek here. If you've been in the canyon, you will notice that, there's limited access to it, but that's because we have construction going up there.
When will that be completed?
The project will be complete with construction mid next year, about June 2027. Yeah.
So be able to ride our bike up to the top?
When it gets back open, yes. Yeah, it'll be back open. It was really difficult. It's a narrow road, a lot of construction, trucks and traffic. You talk about waking up or weeping at night. That's one of the things that keep me up at night is, having an accident with a semi truck and a bike or a person going through there. It's narrow, and it's one of the things that scared me. Cottonwoods Connection. We have 2 water treatment plants. Well, we have 3 total. Parley's, City Creek, and Little Cottonwood is actually part of Metro, but Big Cottonwood is ours. So rather than reconstructing Big Cottonwood now, this is that spacing out. The idea is, let's build a redundant system between those 2 creeks that we can pump water from Big Cottonwood over to Little Cottonwood and treat it there. And then that allows us to have resiliency. If one of these plants were to have a catastrophic event, we can push water either way and still get the redundancy that we need. So a lot of that planning is going in. And that also, again, helps us delay some of that reconstruction of Big, so that we're not hit with all these in the future at all the same time again. This area is probably one of the areas that we're focusing on with the lead service line replacements. Anybody had that survey done in their house to find out if they had lead services?
I called someone and I never heard back.
Okay.
So I wasn't sure if they were,
If you wanna I'll get your number right after this, or Stephanie can get it, and we'll get somebody to give you a call back, for sure.
Does the city pay for it?
So we were able actually to get a grant. This is a federal regulation that came from the Congress Act. Came in here and told us to replace the lead service lines. We got a grant from the state that's gonna cover about 70% of the cost. So was it $36.7 million we have? The total program to replace all those lead service lines in the $100 million range. But the initial known lead service lines is going to be, most of those replaced in the next 3 years. Or I should say not next. We will get all of the lead service lines replaced in the next 3 years, and then we'll continue to investigate things that we don't know if they're lead or not. So your input is really key for us to know where we need to focus. So
where do you have to focus so far?
In our inventory, we found the lead service lines. There's 150, I think, of known lead service lines, and there's several thousand of unknown. So the records weren't good, or couldn't tell from the investigation we did, so you have to actually dig them up and look. So 150 of those, which is actually a really good number, right? It's not huge. Getting those replaced right now, just to start seeing potholes, contractors out digging and around the meter box to understand what the pipe is.
It's like talking from city service down the street into the house.
It's complete from the main to the house. And it's a really unique situation because we have to sometimes get into the house to change some of the plumbing out there too. So it's a really unique contract for us.
Right under my catafra. You're not digging.
We won't dig the line up, we will find a different place to put it, so that's not gonna impact.
I'm with you.
Yeah, there was, I think, was it 2 weeks ago, we had the first lead line get replaced, and it was actually really cool to see how it all happen. And do it pretty quickly. If anybody's been down to our Leroy Houghton building on West Temple, it was built in the 60s. It's vintage. You've got panel walls and no sprinklers. Not efficient. It's just a single brick wall. So we're in a neighborhood that's growing up around us. I heard earlier the apartments. We have that just north of us. A lot of apartments coming in. Narrow the road significantly, so it makes it. Again, another thing that keeps me up at night is the dump truck or something going down that road that just can't see somebody, and so we want to avoid that situation. So we were able to find a property in the just off of 215, so it didn't impact our service ability to get to calls. It's an existing building with an empty yard in the back that we can create a maintenance yard in the back there. And so we'll be moving there in about 3 years as we construct the maintenance yard there. More modern, more efficient, safer for everybody around. Just some other things that we looked at here. Oh, one of the big things, the billing system. A billing system you would think would be fairly simple, but it's actually very, very complicated. And to be able to, right now we're working on a system that was created in-house from our IMS team. They built it themselves, but that software is not, that language isn't being supported by Microsoft anymore, so we need to update it to something modern. I was in the first few presentations of the consultants that came in and the products. It's amazing what is possible that they can do. The payments alone is a thing that you don't have to do it online. You can go now, you'll be able to go to like a CVS or Walmart, take your bill in there and pay it, and it'll show up on our system almost instantaneously. It is great. You can pay by text, all those other different options for people to pay by. So what are the driving factors for our budget and our rates? You heard earlier too, we're an enterprise fund. We actually are 4 enterprise funds: streetlights, water, sewer, and storm drain. We only collect, our revenue is from our rates that we charge or the services that we sell. We have no other income than that on a regular basis. Big projects like this, or the reclamation facility, City Creek, they require us to have to go out and buy or get loans or grants or different things like that. And that becomes one of the things that's going to be driving. It's listed in here as debt service because we got to pay it back at some point, right? You got to buy a house, and then the next 30 years you pay for the house, right? Also, in the federal regulations that I mentioned earlier, the Clean Drinking Water Act, we had new regulations on what we can discharge for phosphorus out of our sewer treatment plant. Looking at that, again, we did a full evaluation, looked at everything. We could add chemical to the effluent, the discharge, and that would have taken care of our situation, but that's not sustainable. It actually binds up that chemical that doesn't make it available to the plants, and that's not a sustainable structure or process for us. So instead, again, looking at the concrete, knowing that it's old, we penciled it out, and it made more sense long-term, generational, to reconstruct the plant, use a different treatment process, and do it all through a biological process. That then, as we discharge the nitrogen, the phosphorus, that's available to the plant life in the stream, the Great Salt Lake. So that's what we decided to do, and that's what we started in about 2015 with our rate increases for that. And we started construction in 2019, and in 2020, all that happened there. And since then, the prices have not come down construction-wise, and we were struggling with making sure we attracted people and paid them enough to come work on this project. So a lot of costs went up uncontrollably, and we made a lot of cuts and savings in there, and still kept this project less than $1 billion. We're $850 million all in with everything, but that's also one of the drivers for us to make sure that we have to pay that debt back afterwards. We were successful in getting a very low interest loan through a WIFIA financing. It's Water Infrastructure Finance Innovation Act. It's a federal loan program. It's 1.3% interest rate. You're not going to get that anywhere, right? That alone saved us $100 million in having to pay back interest alone. So we're trying to do everything we can to figure out the best way to pay for this infrastructure and get it done. So that you can continue to rely and flush your toilet, things go away, turn your faucet on, the water's there, right? And unfortunately, you know, it's an interesting thing. The best part of our job is when you don't know that we're doing our job, right? You turn the water on, it's there, you flush the toilet, it goes away. It's when the water comes up to the surface that you see a broken line or a backup that you're like calling us and you're not doing it. Yeah, we'd rather you not know that we're doing our job, so that's the best way. So, this is not unique to Salt Lake City in any way, financing and paying for this infrastructure. A lot of the infrastructure was all built and installed in 1960, 1970, and a lot of places around the United States are facing the same thing. That number of 70% that I got for federal funding came from a report that was done. It's a national report. Currently in the state of Utah, federal funding accounts for about 3% of all water infrastructure financing. It's a huge decrease, right? So, just as compared to the first, 2017 to 2021, the water utility had about $97 million in debt. The sewer utility, 178, $14 million in the street stormwater, and 2.5 in the street light. You can see since 2022, the water reclamation facility, City Creek, both of those have increased our debt significantly. And in this next coming year, as these projects wrap up, we will have much less, but we'll still have some. So ultimately, at the end of this, you can see over the whole period of time, we're almost $1 billion on the sewer. Most of that debt earlier than 2021 has been paid back already, but we're still facing with a large number in the debt column. When we go to Moody's, or Moody's comes to us to do a credit rating for us, they ask specific questions. They ask how you're going to pay this back, how much they ask the right questions. And in one of they ask us, what's your debt service ratio? Meaning how much revenue you're bringing in compared to how much you have to pay out. That's a ratio. It's 1.5 is what the minimum is, but if they see that you're less than 2%, they may decrease, less than 2, they may rate you. And it's not just public utilities that would be derated, it would be the entire city as a whole that would be derated. So that's something else that we're very concerned about, because then that makes all of the other loans that we have to get go up in interest rate. So that's a goal for us to make sure that we stay over that 2.0 debt service ratio. So I know I'm out of time, but I would have some specific slides to be able to meet that 2.0 debt service ratio. Our revenue has to increase 25%. That does not mean that your bill is going to go up 25% on the water. As a whole, we have to generate 25% more revenue. Same with the sewer. Doesn't mean that your sewer bill is going to automatically go up 40%, but we generate that much more revenue number.
That's from all users?
Yes, from all users.
Corporate,
whatever, yeah, residential, non-residential, commercial, industrial, all those combined. This is probably, okay, it's big enough up there, it's really small here. I'll talk like this so I can see it. Again, the minimum, low, medium, high users, any one of us can be in any one of those columns in a different month, just depending on when we're watering. In December, when there's no outdoor watering, maybe have more people over, maybe you're in that low residential area. In May and June, you're trying to establish yards, or you have people over 4th of July or whatever, you might be in a higher column, a rating in it. So each of those, we can be, one person's not staying in that whole, throughout the whole year. They bounce around. The higher the tier, the higher the rate you pay. That helps conservation, which is always an interesting thing to say, because we sell water, but we tell you not to buy the water. So it's kind of a hard business model to actually function with, right? Makes it difficult.
Although we did a study on that, and we know how much water, or how much money water conservation has saved us over the last 24 years.
And what is that number?
It's $480 million, so nearly $500 million that would have been on our water bills had we not done conservation. And that's savings from capital improvement projects. So for instance, when they had to do work on the water line that goes down to 900 South, if we had kept using water at the rate we used it in the year 2000, that pipe would have had to be rebuilt and be bigger to hold all the capacity of the demand. But because of our conservation that we've done as a community, the pipe didn't have to be enlarged. So they were actually able to repair it in place which saved on that one project alone $20 million. So if we look at capital improvement savings, savings of having to avoid buying water on the spot market, and then also savings related to energy costs, and then conservation programming as an expense, we've saved, like I said, almost $500 million, and by the year 2060, we project we'll save $1.2 billion, and that's water conservation. So your bill may go up pennies, and I don't mean to minimize the impact of your increase, but if we didn't conserve, it would go up much, much higher. And we work hard to make that, to keep those costs down, but conservation saves us water and money. And we know that because we did the math.
And on the water reclamation facility benefited from that, because anytime you flush the toilet, that water gets to the facility, right? The water reclamation facility. We have an average about 33 million gallons a day that come into the sewer treatment plant right now, which is kind of a hard number. Imagine 75 5-gallon buckets, Home Depot, 75 gallons in them. That's how much comes in every second. So, right, a lot of water, and that gives a little bit more context, right? But through the conservation efforts, our increase, you'd expect as the population increases, you'd see this increase coming up along with the population. We're not seeing it spike as much as we had originally had planned. So through an evaluation, when we were getting in 2020, 2021, we realized we don't need to build 4 liquid trains, is what they're called, treatment facilities. We can have 3, and we're still good for the next 30 years. And then we'll leave space and ways to attach when we hit that peak where we have to add more facility or more treatment capacity. So, and that saved us about $170 million by doing it that way too. So.
And I don't know that we counted wastewater. I'll have to look at the report again, but conservation saves us water and money.
Yeah. And it's that.
And it extends the life of our infrastructure.
Absolutely, because you have less water going through it, less pump time, all that kind of stuff happens.
Yay for us.
Yeah, for us. Keep going? We need to stop. Okay. I'll just drop back to and tell you, the last thing I will say, if I can get out of this slide slow,
Is he still in the same department, but he's in a different
is for sure, go visit our website, slc.gov, utilities/rates. It's all there. If you have questions, there's a place to reach out. We do need feedback. And we'll be at the City Hall, manning one of the booths up there for before the public hearing to hear comments there too. So, thank you.
We sure appreciate everybody coming and everybody staying. We appreciate you, Gillis. Michael, thank you for letting us be a bit longer. And yes.
So there's a question that was asked, Ron Street asked about the golf courses. I was able to find out the golf courses are operated by an enterprise fund. So those user fees that golf players pay to use the courses are funded through an enterprise fund, not by taxpayers.
So, I don't know, Rocky and Joel, did you hear that? So golf is enterprise. It is an enterprise fund, golf. Okay, thank you all. Talk to you all soon. Take a drumstick on the way out. Any of us are. Yeah. Nice to meet you. Do you ever know somebody here? Because I am posting on there. See, if you go to East Central and look back, can you look back at East Central? I said, every time you touch it, I will try to